And now for our feature presentation.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, wait, Miguel's here, isn't he? Whoops.
Yeah. Way to step all over my intro there, Burhan. This is the Untitled Movie Show for Wednesday, December 3rd, 2014. I am, of course, your real host, the John McClane of Retro on Limb, Miguel Leon. And, of course, as you heard, my assistant, the Samuel L. Jackson of Retro on Limb, Mr. Michael Burhan.
I don't want those motherfucking snakes on my motherfucking network.
I'm a little bit scared of who I'm going to be now.
Oh, you know who you're going to be. You're the Carl Winslow of our setup here, Mr. Dave Wade.
Hello. How are you, good sir? We missed you last week.
Yeah, I was up in Tampa. I was seeing some relatives for Thanksgiving, and I had some fun. I had a lot of.
If I send you the money, will you get me a Tampa Bay shirt?
We'll see about that. I would have to go back to Tampa to do it because I'm in Orlando right now. But
I have a feeling you will in the future at some point.
Way, if you have sex in Orlando, would it be called the Orlando Magic?
Hopefully, well, one can hope. But yeah, I had a lot of.
When a flower opens in Orlando, is it called the Orlando Bloom?
Probably has about as much charisma.
Sorry.
Oh God, hobbits.
But yeah, I had some fun, and we were actually just talking about some holiday stories. Apparently, things got pretty hectic for you guys over there in Britain, Dave. Do you want to elaborate on what we were talking about?
Yeah, I talked about it on Slamcast, but it's worth mentioning again because it was as we said, or you said to me, which is what do we do well in this country as Brits? Fight in riot. You know, and so I remember it was late, and I was going to get food and beer, so I had to go to a 24-hour supermarket, and I didn't think that when you just forget because you're thinking it's Friday, it's just Friday, and then I remember pulling in because I like shopping at night because it's just me by myself and the roads are empty and the stores are empty, and I remember pulling into the supermarket car park and thinking, holy shit. It's full up to the rafters. I had to park at the end and walk all the way up to the store, and there were police cars and everything. And then I walked in, my brain, this is like when you get that, the chiming effect from 24, dunk dunk, and oh shit, it's Black Friday, and all these, because it was just before midnight, all these people were lined all the way down the checkouts. It looked like the entrance to like a sports event. It was insane, and I just remember thinking, and they were doing the countdown. I remember thinking to the poor bastard at the end. I think I said it to one when I walked by, which is good luck getting a TV, mate, because you're at the end. But I just thought, this is pathetic. Do you know what I mean? Like,
trust me, we're the country that started the whole Black Friday thing. I know firsthand. I had to work several of them.
People don't do anything in this country. They're lazy, but you knock 20% off a flat screen telly and they go to a supermarket in the middle of the night. It's pathetic. And I remember I had to walk down the inside of the checkout and go, excuse me, to go and pick up a crate of beer, then walk all the way down the outside of the checkouts looking like I was going to shoplift. I think the security were not looking at me at this point. And then going up to a till and just going, hey, have fun tonight. And and I do remember saying to the checkout assistant, which is Happy Thanksgiving. And so what was that? And there was irony in my brain just going, exactly, yeah, here we are. We don't know what Thanksgiving is, most of us in this country, but we're standing in a supermarket at midnight for a TV screen with Piss So Off that you could probably find on Amazon anyway.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned Friday, and it's weird. We've gone to the point here in this country where Friday, it's not even Black Friday anymore. It's like
it's Black Friday weekend, isn't it now?
Not even technically, but it's more Black Thursday because it seems like the sales themselves are starting earlier and earlier and earlier into Thanksgiving. That honestly, based on what I've gone through with Black Friday, by the time Friday even comes around, it dies down a little bit. Like the initial sting of the Black Friday sales usually are Thursday night, and then by the time Friday, by the time the sun rises on Friday, it's kind of died down a little bit. I mean, it picks up a little bit. So
what you're saying is all the chilled Black Friday-ers do Black Friday on Friday, but all the hardcore addiction fucking budget shoppers do it on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, Black Friday is for the actual Black Friday itself is for more like your casual shoppers, but the truly dedicated hardcore types, they come in on Thursday night. I mean, they're
because in this country, loads of people complain that it was actually crap in what they knocked off. They inflated their prices before, so they could then knock them down and make it look like they did, decent savings. But dude, you guys actually properly do it though, don't you? You do. I understand why you kind of riot and shit because, well, you're Americans and that's what you do.
Yeah,
Sorry.
to an extent, yeah. I mean, the deals are pretty good.
Yeah, here they were crap.
Well,
put it this way, right? It wouldn't be worth me driving all the way. I had to anyway for other reasons, but not Black Friday reasons. But factor in the cost of petrol and the places that were doing it where I am, which are out of town ones, because they had to be the 24-hour ones, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The savings I made probably would have been lost in commuting fees, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I don't really indulge in Black Friday. I mean, I got one item for Black Friday, and it was only because I happened to be there buying groceries because I was making breakfast for my family, and I just happened to see a certain movie that was being knocked off in price, and I was like, you know what? I really want to see it, and I'll mention it in a second. And it was like $7, so I was like, for a Blu-ray of that, I'll spend the $7, and I'll talk about that in a second. But seems like Dave, you had a lot to go through Black Friday. Burhan, how about you? How'd you spend your Thanksgiving?
My Black Friday basically was a fun night. I've been very, very busy the last couple of weeks, and my Thanksgiving was actually spent during the day filming. I was filming the final scene for Perspective, which is a film short that I'm going to be entering to Cannes Film Festival, and also hashing out another short that I'll be directing in the upcoming months called Glass Mirrors. So working. And 12 midnight I went to Game and basically went and purchased 4 amiibos for my little sprogs, because I got all their Christmas shopping, well, their birthday and Christmas shopping out of the way, because for Christmas I got them Skylanders Trap Team, which they totally went ape shit and tried to kill me for. It was literally, my sons were like, "Shut down!" Ah! And I was like grabbing this box and trying to throw it to their mother. The amiibos, I got those, and I had to choose which ones they wanted. They were full price, and we did for a holiday where people go ape shit and try to kill each other for. The discounts aren't that great. It's like 25% off.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. With my store discount card, technically, considering what they were offering people who didn't work in a place, every day's Black Friday for me.
That's true. I mean, honestly, the only thing that I like that gets dialed down in terms of Black Friday are games and movies. Like, there are some movies that are being sold for like $1 on DVD, $3 for Blu-ray. So I'm like, you know what? That's not a bad deal.
That's the other end, though, isn't it? Which is, if you're not obsessed with like, I must have a flat screen TV, I must have a stereo. If you look at it in the perspective of what ultimately you enjoy, like us guys, obviously this show, movies and stuff like that, that would be the part of it I would enjoy, which is picking up a bargain here or there, like Blu-ray.
There's some legitimate bargains that they have here in terms of like Walmart for their games and movies. Like last year when I worked Black Friday, I remember picking up the Jack and Daxter collection for PS3 because they were selling it for like $10 at the time, and I was like, that's not a bad deal. I'll pick that up. So that was something. And this year I actually picked up the unrated director's cut of Riddick. It was $7, and I was. And
that's actually the best. Well, obviously it is the best version, but that's that actually the extra sequences in it and the changes they made, while not a massive amount of them, actually do really make it.
Well, I
think a good movie.
I didn't see the theatrical cut, but I was like, I'm gonna watch the director's cut. Like I'm the type of person, good or bad, I like seeing the full package. I love seeing all of the bits that were supposed to be in there to get the full director view. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna buy this and I'm gonna watch it. I actually watched it last night. I went over a friend's house to watch it, but that was actually only one of 2 movies that I saw over the vacation. I actually saw another movie, one that actually surprised me. Me and my folks, we actually sat down and watched Brett Ratner's Hercules.
Brett Ratner.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna shock you guys. I actually like the movie. It's not a challenging movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything new, but for just being a 90-minute popcorn movie, it's not bad. I mean,
but sometimes that's good, isn't it? You don't expect anything more than it just to be entertain me. I don't need an Oscar here, just entertain me.
Yeah, I mean,
the Michael Bay of Hercules movies.
You know what? Not even, because Michael Bay's stuff is big and just over the top. This one had a good pacing. The action was good. The Rock was awesome as always. I mean, he plays he plays a great old fashioned like sword and sandals hero.
See, I've not seen it. Is it? It's not like, I mean, obviously it's got CG, but is it kind of like the Ray Harryhausen sort of things? Does it feel old school? If that makes sense. Like.
Kinda. Honestly, the only big problem I had with it was, and this was something I think it was more my parents' TV. They have one of the newer like flat screen TVs, and the way that the movie shot is very clean. It's got a very digital look to it. It doesn't have that epic feel that those older movies had. And
please tell me he at least does his Roger Moore eyebrow thing at once in it.
I think at one point he does, yeah.
And I am sold.
For me, my mum watched it recently as well, and from what I've seen of it, it's basically The Rock playing the Scorpion King / Hercules.
He's playing to his strengths then.
Yeah,
I love I love the way that they changed the mythos of Hercules. If you haven't seen it yet, this is kind of a spoiler, although they establish it early on in the movie. Basically, instead of being the son of Zeus, he's actually just a leader of a mercenary group that tricks people into thinking he's the son of Zeus in order to get money. Like, he kind of scams people into thinking that he's...
I really like that, actually. That's a really cool little twist.
Yeah, he has his group of men working behind the scenes to, like, make people think that he's, performing these big acts of
It's kind of a Brothers Grimm twist there, isn't there?
Kinda, but he ends up becoming a hero at the end and saving this town. I will say this, though, I do like the choice to make John Hurt the villain. The old man from Hellboy. You don't expect that, because he's, like, in his 80s, but he plays a pretty solid bad guy. If you're not familiar with John Hurt, he's, you've seen...
the bloke who had an alien pop out of his chest in 1979.
Yeah. Like I said, for a more modern view of him, he was the old man from the first Hellboy movie.
And if I can be really anal and nerdy, he's the voice of Aragorn in the 70s animated version of Lord of the Rings.
I buy it. I can totally hear that.
Can you dig that, sucker?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Hercules, I actually really gotta recommend it. I mean, if you want to pick it up cheap on DVD, by all means. If it's on TV, like, this is gonna be one of those movies that I think you're gonna see pop up on like FX or USA a lot. Like, it's got enough to it to where it's like something you could watch on like a Saturday afternoon and be like, well, that was a good hour and a half, 2 hours that I spent. It's not an epic, but it's good for what it is. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's still a good wheel.
It's still round.
Yeah, it's still round. It doesn't fall apart. It does what it has to. And in terms of Riddick, I really did love that movie. That movie, I think Brad Jones put it best. It's a B movie that kind of knows it's a B movie and just goes with it. Like,
you know how they shot it, don't you? Like, all the sets are, well, not there, basically.
You know what? In all honesty, that to me brought kind of a charm to it.
I liked it. No, I really liked it. It was the visuals in that movie are absolutely brilliant. Plus, It's got one of the, sorry people, spoilers, but this is all I'm going to say. It's got one of the best beheading sequences in a film ever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, with the machete. That was awesome.
All I'll say is you'll think of Tupperware in a completely new way now.
Oh, yeah, that was a great scene. But yeah, I think my favorite part was the whole second act when it basically becomes a slasher movie. I
enjoyed Katie Sackhoff's breasts.
Oh, me too. I'm this coming from a guy who was a big Battlestar Galactica fan.
I was quite surprised they were in there.
You know what? I'm glad I invested in the director's cut.
I remember thinking, was that not in the theatrical cut? All I remember is in that sequence thinking, sorry people like that, honestly, I'm not a pervert. I like Katie Sackhoff, and I just remember thinking, well, I didn't expect this. This is an interesting bonus. And then all of a sudden I felt like I was watching it with, I forget his name now. What's his name from fucking Big Bang?
Sheldon?
No, the other guy, the one who always fantasizes about her.
Oh,
Wolowitz?
Oh. Whoa, what? Furhan, you have a fan on in the background? What is that?
That's Dave.
Dave.
No, it's not me. I have nothing on in the background.
Yeah, Dave, that's you. It's your laptop.
Okay, all of a sudden I just heard this giant whizzing sound like you just had
Oh, that's
traffic.
probably it might be my hard drive because this thing runs on coal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, people, I do apologize.
So if you
Yeah,
need
if I
Dave's
could-
hard
if I-
drive, ring us in.
Yeah, if I could,
at Michael
if I
Burnham.
could do this podcast on a ZX Spectrum, I would.
I think your hard drive just went Mach 1 for a second there.
Probably
Sorry,
was.
people, I'm cheap. I don't
So-
feel like upgrading.
Let's ask, what's been going on in the movieverse at the moment, Miguel? What's happening in movie news? I know they've cast a Suicide Squad. And one of the most unlikeliest names has been named as one of the characters. Well, two of them.
I would love to talk about this, but we do have a movie episode movie news episode coming up soon, so I kind of want to save it for that.
But this I do have to talk about, even though
Go ahead.
because it's not really movie news, it's star news of someone in the movie world, which is Tom Cruise almost got run over by a London bus this week.
Damn it! So close.
Did you see this, people? He genuinely stepped into the road, not really appreciating his environment, and almost got hit. And I mean almost, as in it wasn't like staged or anything like that. Almost got run over by a London bus.
Well, praise Xenu that he didn't.
Praise Allah and Vishnu and Bhagwan
No, you-
and
He tried to bullet time out the way, but then he realised that he wasn't in front of a green screen and it was real.
He realized he wasn't Keanu Reeves.
hopefully.
But the church,
he'll
of
sell the rights and
Scientology
make
saved
millions.
him.
One at a time, boys. One at a time.
Hopefully he'll sell the rights and make millions.
Yeah, there'll be a movie of this years and years and years and years and years from now after he's passed away.
I'm still waiting on my Les Grossman movie.
Oh, that character is awesome. I love Tropic Thunder. It's one of my all-time favorite scripts. I think it's probably one of the. And I'm coming from a guy who was really embarrassingly big into the whole celebrity thing in the mid 2000s. So, I mean, that script is just so beautiful to me. It really is. I love that movie
It's
to death.
hilarious. The movie's got so many fucking cameos. It's unbelievable. And Matthew McConaughey as the agent.
One of the best death scenes ever.
Yeah, it makes me laugh so much. It's a
He's
great,
got no hands at you.
It's like it's just fake. It's just corn syrup, you guys. Really salty corn syrup.
Just the banter, which is, dude, why do you never break character?
I don't even break character for the DVD commentary.
Oh my god, I just love the archetypes in there. Just everything about that movie is hilarious.
Yeah,
Like,
Nick. Did you say Nick? I mean, Nicola.
no, it was Lance. It was like, so what's this girl's name? Lance. It's like, well, I guess you and Lance. Wait a minute, Lance. Like, nah, man, I said Nance. It's Nance. It's like, dude, if you untie me, I will totally suck your cock. I love that scene. That like I said, everything about that movie, all the archetypes they got from like that era was just beautiful. I like I said, it's one of the. It really does give me hope that Ben Stiller really pursues more writing stuff because that script is amazing.
Oh, it's funny you say Ben Stiller and we talk about this because I didn't know this was coming out. I like it when, to quote The Simpsons, it's new Billboard Day. When I was driving home from work this morning, and I hadn't noticed this on the way into work, and there was a big billboard in front of me, and just went, oh wait, there's a new Night at the Museum movie?
Yeah,
that was
and
one of Robin Williams' last movies.
And I guarantee you it's going to make a ton of money on
But
that.
that's the first thing I thought was, you know what? I mean, I do actually quite enjoy the other two, but the first thing I thought was, is he in it? Because I couldn't stop because I was in traffic, but I was trying to scan the billboard as quickly as I could to see if I could spot him.
Yeah, he's
So
in it.
my brain just went, well, clearly that's made before his untimely sad death, so I'm just going to see it for him. And as you said, it's going to make a ton of money because I'm sure a lot of people who would not watch that sort of movie will watch it to see Robin Williams' last performance. But
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think he's got a handful of movies that still haven't come out yet, but I think in terms of name recognition, this one is probably going to be the biggest seller. And you know what? More power to him. I mean, I don't hate the Night at the Museum movies. They just don't do it for me. They're just kind of there. But you know what? If this is going to be his last performance that people remember, fair enough. I mean, it's unfortunate that it has to be his last performance, but you know what? It's not.
at least we have more Robin Williams, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently he did a Christmas movie as well, which was terrible. And my brother
Well, he
watched
did-
it recently. He was just like, yeah.
He did one other movie where it was like The Angriest Man in Brooklyn, which I've seen the DVD cover at our at the Walmart. Don't know much about it anyway.
I know nothing about it. I've not heard anyone talk about it, but it's like, I mean, I love Robin Williams, but you know, I'm not just because sorry, it sounds really cold. Just because he sadly passed away, I'm not going to be one of those people that has to go out of his way to find everything he ever did, because to me, he was very much. I had to be invested in the material he made. If that makes sense.
You don't need to go out of your way to see something like RV. You don't.
Yeah,
trust me.
that movie was terrible. Even for there's some movies I would watch, are based on like someone's ability to act and their character and such. But there are others where you look at it and think, cash cow. You did it for the money.
Yeah, this was clearly a paycheck movie.
Yeah. And there's a lot of actors who do it. Robert Downey Jr. used to do a lot of paycheck movies. You can say his Marvel movies are kind of his paycheck movies.
Technically. I mean, I'm one of the... I defend...
I would say technically, but I think he's fallen in love with the character now.
Well,
yeah.
apparently,
I
due to his kind of floundering film career outside of Marvel, and realizing that he's not really going to make that much of a splash outside of those movies, he may stay on, from what I've been hearing, because if anything's like... Apparently The Judge didn't do very well in terms of that, but, we never know.
And it's kind of the catch-22 of movies nowadays, is really, in order to make the big bucks, you got to attach yourself more to like a character than yourself. I mean, look at something... look at some of the other Marvel movies. Hugh Jackman's been trying to expand himself from Wolverine, and it just hasn't clicked yet. He hasn't been able to break that out. Chris Evans has been having that issue with Captain America. I mean, it's kind of the catch-22 of, do you want to make money or do you want to broaden your career? Because you can't have both anymore. You can't really sell yourself as the actor if you want to make the big bucks. You got to sell yourself as a character.
Did we report on this show at one point that Chris Evans was going to retire from making movies as an actor because of the fact that he really felt that he wasn't going to progress any further than Captain America?
Yeah,
which is a smart move. Don't get me wrong. If I had like an iconic role that I knew I couldn't break away from, then it's not like the Downey Jr. who was doing Sherlock Holmes, grossing fairly well on that, and then doing the Iron Man movies at the same time. It's kind of one of those things where he's kind of in the same situation as Johnny Depp, in a sense. Apart from like the Pirates of the Caribbean films, Depp really doesn't have much. And it's not saying that he's a bad actor. It's just saying that people just don't really want to see him in anything else, which is a shame because I still recommend Transcendence apart from the shitty writing.
I mean, there's some movies of his that I like that aren't, the standard Tim Burton fare. I mean, I thought Secret Window was pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. I
prefer old school Depp.
Crybaby era Depp.
Can I just quickly say, on the subject of Robert Downey Jr., a very, very underrated gem of a movie and a very bold decision that he took at the time. And I own this on DVD, and I remember when it was announced, and you just wouldn't think he could have done it. But have you seen Chaplin?
Yes. That was
I haven't.
And that wasn't Robert Downey Jr. in Chaplin with Johnny Depp.
It was him, I believe. Marissa Tomei. Oh, Marissa Tomei, you never got old.
Nope.
And I love your breasts. Sorry.
We all love
Dan
Marissa
Aykroyd,
Tomei's breasts. I'm saying.
Penelope Ann Miller, and Kevin Kline.
Speaking about,
that sounds like a pretty solid cast.
Yeah,
it's a really good movie, but it's a movie that you watch it and you kind of suspend belief in the fact that you're watching Robert Downey Jr. If that makes sense, he really does deliver Chaplin.
I think it's one of those things where you look at it and people don't understand how amazing some of these actors are, because I know a lot.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. He did when people think pulp and he's Iron Man and he's Holmes and stuff like this. It's in this movie he's Chaplin. And he pulls it off, and it's a testament to the fact that, forget his summer blockbuster movies, at heart, he's essentially an amazing actor.
And it's Chaplin's directed by Richard Attenborough, the old man from Jurassic Park.
Who passed on recently, didn't he?
Yeah, August 2014. Speaking of which, I do at some point want to talk about the two trailers that premiered recently. So when we do our news episode, that's going to be two of the big ones, which is obviously Episode 7 and Jurassic World.
Yeah, if you
I have to say, I'll save most of it for them, but Episode 7 trailer kind of... I was taking a big... I'm still upset that Lucas decided he needed more money than anyone needs ever in the world, but ultimately handed his company over and everything of his company, property over at quite a cut-down price. Believe it or not, that sounds gross, in the world of poverty and stuff, but how much money you got. Yeah, but...
that's not a cut-down price. Dude's freaking rich, bitch.
Yeah,
I mean, he was smart with it.
He was smart with his money. I mean,
yeah, but he gave everything away.
But he didn't sell it like for Indiana Jones or anything like that. Disney had to purchase that back separately because that was owned by Amblin.
All I know is I was upset when I found out he did it, and I was kind of upset. Don't get me wrong, there's some Disney stuff I do like, and obviously they are a solid studio. But I just remember thinking, Star Wars is now Disney. Oh, I hate the thought of this movie. I'm going to boycott it, and then I watched the trailer and just saying, sorry people, spoilers, but you must have seen the trailer. Just the fact that seeing the Millennium Falcon in it, I regressed to being 8-year-old Dave again, got all giddy and excited and just went, I think I might love this movie even before it's out.
Well, I've got a little rant about the fact that the biggest thing they had a problem with wasn't the Claymore lightsaber, by the way. The biggest problem they had was because there was a black stormtrooper.
Yes,
I
will.
Here I'm going to give the argument one bit of solace, okay? And I'm just going to say this: in the A canon, which is the 6 movies that have been out so far, have they established that later on in the series that the stormtroopers are no longer clones?
Yes, they're recruits.
They actually established that because
they don't. It's given. You've only got to hear about the bit when they're talking when Obi-Wan in episode, I'm not going to say it like that. Sorry, even though we're on episode 7, I'm going to say in the original Star Wars movie when Obi-Wan drops the tractor beam by walking around that. Why would you put your tractor beam in a precariously, small-edged part of the building? I don't know, but the way the stormtroopers are talking is clearly that their interests are they're not clones, they're people.
It's not just that as well. It's the fact that they were using from an argument that was made by Xander Scullion. The clones were actually being cloned from several different people. Apparently they had like some sort of selective database in terms of.
And also, if you look at the expanded universe and what Lucas allowed, which Disney struck off as being canon, this does annoy me. If you look at the expanded universe, and I'm even talking because this is one thing that worries me, which is George Lucas said, if you want to make a fan film, you can do it. Just don't make it for money. But if you want to use my property, you can do it. I always like that about Lucas. And stuff like Troops. You've seen Troops, right? If you haven't, type Troops into YouTube, and it's a short parody film about 15 minutes long made in the 90s that they made, and it's got brilliant special effects, but they made using nothing but off-the-shelf software that Lucas was so impressed with that he gave these people a job in ILM. And imagine, this is the premise for it. Imagine Cops, the TV show, but with the Empire. And it even starts with the Cops, theme tune, and it goes, Troops is made for the brave law enforcers of the Imperial Empire. And it even explains how Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen actually died from the thermal detonator. And it was basically Aunt Beru's fault and they were having a domestic. And it's got the greatest line from a stormtrooper you'll ever hear, which is he's talking to a Jawa. And he goes, yes, I understand you've got a family. So do I. But you don't see me stealing Imperial droids, do you?
You know what? One day I gotta go back and rewatch the movies. I really do at some point want to do a Star Wars episode. Mostly because I know it'll get us good views. Wink, wink. But
also the fact that we're gonna probably have tons of trolls sitting there swearing at us.
You know what? At least they're listening to the show. That's all I care about.
This isn't canon. This is canon.
Yeah. It will be fun to basically. Just
we really, you know what? We really should save that for like April 1st and just purposely troll the fans. Like, I was expecting Picard to pop up. I didn't see him in there. This movie sucks.
And then
There's not
we
enough
all
CGI in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah,
Burn,
then
you're gonna have to make an intro for a trailer, which is
shit out of. But yeah,
coming
no,
this April 1st on the Untitled Movie Show.
the thing is, I will point this
Star
out and say to
Wars.
people, they really need to stop. You know, in terms of like debating over the color of someone's skin. That's one thing that if they're doing the freaking Fantastic, people are accepting the current incarnation for the Fantastic Four, which looks garbage, right? And that's the worst way to basically change someone's skin color. Wink, wink. I'm sorry. And they're accepting this. It's kind of, you know, come on.
I don't get why they attacked it though. I honestly don't. You can't. Why can't you? Because clearly they recruit. That's the way I look at it. Clearly they recruit anyone. What's this big fucking hoo-ha about? It's a black stormtrooper. Like, seriously, people? It's 2014. What's your fucking problem? Although, my little twist on this is, based on his, and obviously it's a teaser trailer, based on the way he's behaving and acting is, I think he's clearly in disguise and he's just been busted and he's got away from something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, the fact is, as well, just to basically put it out there, I'm excited to see who this new Sith Lord is. You know,
I would like to say though, I'll have a pop at fighting him because bottom line is with this Claymore, he ain't going to be able to spin it around all fancy Obi-Wan style because it got his own hand off.
Yeah, that looked, but it looked really like I have to admit it looked really sexy.
This was the bit that sold me. Apart from the Millennium Falcon and the X-wings, that was the bit of the trailer where my brain just went, "Oh my god, I think I got Sammy."
Yeah, Star Wars went fucking Game of Thrones on you.
Well, listen, I'm gonna say one last thing, and then I do want to move on to our main series. This isn't the first time we've been wowed by a Star Wars trailer. You know, we all need to think back to 1999, and I'll just say it at that. So I'm gonna reserve my judgment until I see more footage, but for now, it's gonna be worth some.
Good point, Miguel, because we also need to understand and appreciate that it's still a year away, so we don't know what everything outside of these scenes looks like.
Yeah,
no,
so
and it's technically, I will point out, this isn't a trailer because it's just a segment of footage that J.J. Abrams has put together just to give us an idea of what's going on.
Just to give me an erection.
Yeah, basically, to give people like Dave an erection. I will say I wasn't kind of impressed. I kind of went meh to it. I watched it back several times.
Well, even at the X-Wings, skimming the surface of the sea?
Yeah, I was impressed by the Millennium Falcon. I have to admit that did make like little Mike go yay, like I was watching Star Wars at Christmas Day on my dad's big TV, but it didn't look that impressive because I wanted to see a lot more story. But we've got to wait. You know, it's one of those things where
It's a teaser trailer though.
Yeah,
it's
not
about story. It's about just go look how shiny and fantastic I look.
That's literally it. And the thing that kind of threw me is it looked very nouveau. Like, you know, it looked like it was shot in like 4K. Where in terms of like the old Lucas stuff, it didn't even look HD. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. But yeah.
I will say, I know it's 30 years after the original trilogy, but I do hope that they do give a nod, and all the characters have, just to kind of tie it in Star Wars. We see to kind of for the prequel trilogy, which is everyone has kind of, there's a sense of the 70s in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've got a funny feeling though that Luke is going to die in this. Just point it out there.
Well, I can't.
You know what? Honestly, I kind of hope he does. That way, it finally.
He asked for Harrison Ford got a scale back role because he broke his foot because we don't build shit properly in this country. But Luke, yeah, I'm going to call you Luke. Sorry, Mark Hamill, but you're Luke. Let's accept it. It destroys your career. He was kind of adamant that he would do this. Paycheck comes back to what we just said, but from what I read, literally said, I don't want a big part. I really don't want a big part. And he deliberately asked for like a scale back, sort of almost cameo involvement role.
Like I said, I respect that. I think he just wants to move on, and I think honestly at this point the only way a character like his is going to move on is if you kill the character off. So honestly, at this point, given what he's gone through over the years with that character and with the fan base, I think he just wants closure, and you know what? I can respect that. I can honestly respect if he's like, hey, I'll do this, but I want you to kill off my character because I just want it to end. I could be like, all right, fair enough.
How many times did Mel Gibson want Riggs to be killed off in Lethal Weapon? Just saying. And now,
Well, I mean,
speaking of
speak-
Lethal Weapon, we might as
Yes.
well go into the film that was inspired by a book in a similar vein, and also had a script that was leading back to Lethal Weapon. That movie is what, Miguel?
that would be Die Hard, 1988. Yes,
Die Hard!
Die Hard. We alluded to it earlier with our intros, but tonight is our Die Hard retrospective. I've been binging on four of them. We'll get to part 5 in a bit, and especially part 4. But I went out of my way to watch these because if there was one franchise that I didn't want to halfway like I normally do, it's the Die Hard franchise, because it really is a very celebrated action franchise. It really is one of those last few movie franchises with name recognition anymore. Let's start with the first one, 1988. When was the first time you saw it? Burhan, we'll start with you.
My first experience with Die Hard was 1989, believe it or not. I remember I was a kid, my dad popped in the Betamax, because...
Betamax, Mike, we're British.
Okay, I know my English and my American are getting mixed, but still. The Betamax. And he used to rent loads of videotapes from the store that I still use to this day. They changed. They used to be home view video, then they changed to 40 hours only after the Bond film, of course.
Hey, it's funny you say that though, because the title of the book is very Bondish, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1979 novel, and it's called Nothing Lasts Forever.
Correct. And he went there, picked up the beta. They were renting beta cassettes, and popped it in the beta Max and popped. I remember the top loader. He just popped the top loader down.
Oh, I love top loaders.
And we're watching this film, and where you had the tracking, and you had to get the tracking done and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, nostalgia! And
we have gone over most of our fan base's head with this conversation right now.
But it's one of those.
My dad's Betamax actually had a remote control, right, that was cabled to it,
Yes.
hardwired, and it was a Sony one, and it had a really long cable. So what we did was we stuck it under the carpet, and then it sat on my dad's armchair, and it actually had a white sliding panel over the record button.
Wow.
It was, so you wouldn't record over it by mistake, as we all know. And the whole thing with the notch in the tape, you could actually put a little bit of paper in there, and then it would allow it to record.
That's what I used to do with my old wrestling tapes.
But it was one of those situations where I'd watch it, and I remember watching the guy from Moonlighting, Bruce Willis, and I'm just like, he was in Moonlighting! Just as a kid, because I was stupid. Fight, with these, terrorists, of course, and, the police and everything.
12 terrorists, one
And
cop. The
all
odds
I-
are against John McClane.
all
That's
I
just
remember
the way
is-
he likes it.
Yeah, all I remember, this guy was in a wife beater, and my dad was sitting down in his wife beater, drinking his beer, going, "Yeah, look, see, he's wearing a vest like me, so that means I'm hard." And I'm just by definition, I was looking at my dad, going, "Yeah, you're hard, Dad," and I'm just watching, being a young mind getting corrupted by Die Hard in 1989. I remember that very vividly, and then after every Christmas we would watch that movie. And it was great.
And it's a Christmas movie, people. It is a Christmas movie. I know it's not released at Christmas, but I'm sorry, it's a canon Christmas movie.
And it transitioned Bruce Willis from being this big TV actor, because he, Moonlighting was still pulling in the top ratings at the time.
That was actually a big controversy over
Yeah, I believe
him.
this is where their relationship fell apart, isn't it? Him and what's her name, Sybil Shepherd, because she used to be a movie actor, big movie actor, and then cut her teeth on TV, whereas he was suddenly transcending, and she didn't like it. And this is the last couple of seasons of Moonlighting. Apparently, they literally turned up, were professional, but couldn't fucking stand each other and didn't talk to each other other than to record scenes.
Yeah, fair. I've heard those stories too. How about you, Dave? What was your first experience with Die Hard?
We just got satellite TV for the first time, which was a big deal because obviously we only had 4 channels up to then, and original satellite TV only had 5 channels anyway, and we had Sky Movies. So I actually saw Die Hard when Die Hard 2 was released in the cinemas. And yeah, I watched it, and I just remember thinking, hey, I know about this movie, and I love moonlighting, but even Equal Young Dave just went, you can't possibly pull off, brute hard force action movie star. And then I watched it, my brain just went, holy shit. Wisecracking, smart, funny, intelligent wit, in the sense that some of the one-liners are actually, when he delivers them, kind of, there's an essence or meaning within what he's saying. It's not just like, I blew his head off. And it absolutely blew me away. And I remember thinking, holy shit, Bruce Willis is the best action hero ever. Who would have thought about it? And it introduced the whole that everyone ripped off, but, and obviously it's based on the book, but and this is why even as a kid I loved it, which was, I just like the fact, which is, it's not running around all over the place. It's just he's in this one specific place. His confines are set. He can't, go outside. Gave it a real sense of claustrophobia.
Yeah, that was something that we'll talk about when we talk about the impact of Die Hard, but I'll say this before we get into the information. I actually recently saw the movie for the first time earlier.
There is a director's cut, by the way. You know this. It's only got like 3 minutes extra, I think, but there is a director's cut.
Huh, I'll have to actually look for that. But actually, it's Die Hard's kind of significant to me because I recently watched it this year for the first time. It was actually the first thing I saw in my new apartment. I just finished unpacking all my stuff. I had hooked up my TV, and just for giggles, I tried hooking it up to the cable connection just to see what I could pick up through there. And apparently, at the time, they had not turned off the cable signal to my apartment, so I think for about the first 4 months of my apartment, I was able to watch cable TV. And
they did that happened to me in Canada. I had premium package just by moving into a place and daring to see what happened if I plugged it into my telly.
Yeah, I got about 4 months in before they finally shut it down. But the first thing I watched was Die Hard.
Which, may I add, is an amazing way to christen your new apartment.
Oh yeah, I sat there and I'm like, you know what? I've never seen Die Hard before. I think it was AMC was doing a marathon at the time of the first 3 movies, so they were just showing the first one, and I was like, I'll sit down and watch it. And it was the TV cut, so it was like 3 hours long with commercials. But I'll say this, man, for a 3-hour long movie, I was not bored at all. I mean, this movie really, it was the greatest miniseries I had ever seen. Let's just say that.
That's the best descriptive term I've ever heard for watching a badly butchered commercial TV cut of a movie ever. TV miniseries. I'm going to have to borrow that from you, mate. Sorry.
But yeah, there's the development for this is actually pretty huge. I mean, obviously you alluded to it earlier, is the Die Hard that we know of is actually based off of a book called Nothing Lasts Forever, which is actually a sequel book in its own right to the 1966 novel The Detective. And here's the big kicker: that movie actually did get adapted in '68, starring Frank Sinatra of all people.
Oh, I got to see this. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean,
I do know that this was written or pitched. They pitched it when they were trying to flog it as a sequel to Commando.
Yes, actually, I was just about to say that.
Sorry.
But what's funny is that because the movie was the source was technically a sequel to The Detective, they actually had to contractually offer Frank Sinatra the role of John McClane in Die Hard because of the fact that he played the same character in The Detective. Can you imagine how different this movie would be if Sinatra had actually said yes to it? Thankfully, he said no.
Sung his way out of death sequences.
Yeah, this movie would have been completely different, but it's funny you mentioned that. But yeah, the movie itself was actually pitched as a sequel to Commando. When they signed John McTiernan, they were actually trying to get Schwarzenegger to sign on because he had just worked with him the year before on Predator, and he turned it down. And this actually will lead into the Bruce Willis being chosen because you got to imagine, people, every actor in Hollywood turned down this role. I mean, I was looking at the list. Schwarzenegger turned it down, so they offered it to Stallone. He turned it down. They offered it to Harrison Ford. He turned it down. They offered it to Don Johnson. He turned it down. They offered it to Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty, Richard
Dustin
Gere.
Hoffman?
Yeah. Yeah. They were trying to get a big-name actor because at the time, Fox was afraid that the movie wouldn't sell on its own, so they were like, we got to get a big-name actor. So They went after every leading man they could. They tried to get Dustin Hoffman, and he turned it down. Warren Beatty turned it down. Richard Gere turned it down. Clint Eastwood turned it down. Burt Reynolds turned it down.
The list goes on and on.
No one wanted to sign on to do this, and they literally went with the last actor they could possibly get.
Is it true though that the studio? This is just it might be hearsay that the studio accepted him because they wanted to make the movie, and no one else would take the role, but they basically had they were going to almost write it off, and they had no faith in him whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those movies that I think they were probably like. Yeah, this is probably going to be one of those, movies that just isn't going to catch on. I mean, you hear that all the time. I mean, probably the most famous one is Star Wars. I mean, that's basically going to be like a B-roll movie that Fox had just kind of, snuck out into theaters and became the biggest hit of all time. So, I mean, it doesn't say specifically in the article that I'm reading, but it would not shock me if that's the case, because that usually is.
Well, that's what I read, but it's on a fan site. It's not. And this is a couple of months ago, but I do know that considering and it is by no means, even for them, a massive budget, but considering they were prepared to write this movie off because they just wanted to make it, and they accepted Bruce Willis, he wasn't their fucking 15th choice, listening to you, it still had a budget of 28 million, so that's quite a sizable, we're prepared to take a pot at something here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a relatively low budget. I mean, I'm sure if I went in and adjusted it for inflation, it would probably it would probably have about maybe a $60 million budget, which is about on par with your average action movie nowadays.
Yeah, it's basically it had. You'd probably look at the considerable amount of that budget probably went to the explosions, the skyscraper.
Yeah. But you wouldn't know it to watch it that it's a low budget movie. They spent the money well.
And that's completely to John McTiernan. I think McTiernan's a very underrated action director.
I was just going to say that, yeah. He's a very underrated director.
Yeah, he does not get enough credit in terms of being probably I'd say one of the forefathers of modern action, and I would point to Die Hard in terms of that stance. Oh, I do have to retract something. Hoffman and Beatty were not offered it. They were just, I don't know why they're listed in the article, but they just happen to be listed in here. But no, they did not offer the roles to Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty. That was
shame, because if Hoffman was actually in it, there would have been a sequence where they would have played upon his previous acting history, and he would have got out of a jam by dressing as a woman.
I'm just pointing out that as well, though. There is a little gag here. Apparently, Stallone recently opened up and said that when they asked him why he did Rhinestone, he goes, it was Schwarzenegger's fault, because his agent, every time he got given a certain role, he booked the same type of role for Stallone. So if the whole reason that Stallone turned down Die Hard was because Schwarzenegger didn't want it. Believe it or not.
But it's a happy accident, though, isn't it? Which is, I know it's easy for us to say this now because we now have this gem of a movie that set a modern standard for action movies or Western action movies. If it didn't turn out this way, where would we be now? Do you know what I mean? If it was anyone else, would it have tanked? Would it have been successful? Would we have 5 Die Hard movies with Stallone or something? I gotta say, I'm glad the fates played out this way, and we ended up with, almost said John McClane, Bruce Willis in this, because, whether the studio took a chance on him or not, it's definitely something that's benefited modern sort of action movie. I'm not going to say deep, Oscar-winning material, but definitely has benefited modern sort of action cinema.
Oh, definitely, and I'll get to that when I talk about the impact of it. But I mean, you look at the cast on here. I just want to talk about some of the other people in here, specifically the villain in here, Hans
Gruber.
Yeah,
by the way, before we do that, just so you know, ladies and gents, if you want to join us in the live chat, so that we can actually discuss this with us, it's youtube.com/unlimradio. Twitter's the same, twitter.com/unlimradio, or facebook.com/unlimradio. Do it now. Come on. Join us. And talk.
Link Patty.
I will do. It's linked to my profile, Patty, but I'll add it.
Because she loves Die Hard.
But yeah, sorry, Miguel, as you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about star power and the acting in a movie, I really do want to bring up Alan Rickman's character as Hans Gruber, because he plays that character so menacingly and so low key, but at the same time, it's just there's so much of a bravado to it. Like it's a brilliant way he plays it. Like I can't really. How would you describe it? How he plays that character?
I would say, I'm going to say this, and hopefully people understand where I'm coming from with it, but it's not necessarily this, but he plays it with a campish air. But that might be because that's just them being stereotypes on, how they portrayed Europeans, because he's not English in this when I say European, by the way, people out there, if you haven't seen this, sort your fucking life out.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that you do have to see.
And you'll thank us. You really will thank us. But he plays it with kind of a campish air, which I think is kind of just trying to overly exaggerate the fact that he's European. But there's a kind of just an absolute level of brutality that is hidden behind a bloke in a suit, if that makes sense. He just, he's got all the right answers for everything. He's very single-minded in his pursuit of what he wants, but he kind of he humors the people in it, like who's the bloke who does coke, who tries to sell out John McClane?
I forget who he is, but he's the guy that gets shot in the head, right?
Yeah, but he humors people. It's like he's almost an old school Bond villain.
I could definitely see Alan Rickman playing a Bond villain.
Yeah, in the sense that he knows what he's got to do. He's there for a specific reason. He's, economic in the way that he's about to achieve his goals, but at the same time, that little twinkle in his eye, the fact that he's a cold-hearted bastard in a maniac, he likes to have fun.
I actually like the fact that, and this is a bit of a spoiler alert, that I think the reason that he plays it up and camps it up is the fact that it leads to him not really being that. I think the fact that he plays it so over the top and deliberate and villainy, I think is deliberate, especially when you get into the twist in the ending. Burhan, what do you think? How would you describe the way Rickman plays this character?
I think it's kind of. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You just kind of took too much of a dramatic pause.
I have to. That's how I work.
You're trying to do your own Alan Rickman.
Yeah, it's how would you describe the character? It's kind of very, I would say, stern, burst. He tries to play the quiet essence type villain. The one that's very. You don't know what he's going to do until he does it.
Methodical.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that they're usually the type of villains that he kind of plays, if that makes sense. He always does that. He tries to play the character as dramatic, but has that quiet, dramatic essence to it, in the sense, that ambiance.
Don't second guess my next step because you don't know what's coming.
Yeah, it's like you don't know what I'm gonna do, and I'm not gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna blow your fucking brains out. And that's the great thing about him. He was very much, he had that quiet air to him. He was fucking scary. I remember being a kid watching this, thinking to myself that I was going to shit my pants, because this fucking scary fucker is just going to go around, like, trying to kill and hurt Bruce Willis.
Dude, I was 12 the first time I saw this, but I'll say that. He terrified me in this movie.
I've got a factoid about the book that this was based on, but we can talk about that in a little bit. Go on, Miguel.
I'm going to say it right now. I was 25 when I saw this movie, and he kind of gave me a bit of a chill. Although, to be fair, at this point, watching the movie, you can't help but sit there and go, why can't he's Snape.
Yeah.
Yeah. His delivery as well, his delivery of lines that people have taken the piss out of many, many times, mainly because of his machine gun speech, but his delivery of lines in this movie, where everything is just so dramatic. Like, when he reads Bruce Willis's note and he goes, ho, 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 now I have a machine gun. And I think Family Guy picked up on this, didn't they, with that joke where there's a segue where Peter Griffin he makes some reference about Alan Rickman, and Alan Rickman calls his own ants machine, and he goes, hello, Alan Rickman, it's Alan Rickman. Oh, oh, oh. Don't forget to take pork chops out of the freezer and put them in the fridge.
It's not from Family Guy, isn't it?
Oh, of course it's from Family Guy, because it's only vaguely funny.
Yeah. It's one of those,
I mean,
it's a very tongue-in-cheek. But yeah, he has that kind of. the thing about him when he's on, he's on. You know, he's one of those character actors who was on fire. There was no way.
Oh, Snake.
Yeah, well, apart from Snape. But he is one of those guys who could play a very methodical and very defiant type villain, and he doesn't have to do much to do it. Because
he's a businessman villain. It's the best way I describe him in this, which is, you know, he has fun outside of his what he's doing because he knows he's got the power to do so because he's enslaved this entire skyscraper. But ultimately, he never takes his eye off the goal, which is there for the is it Varabonds? $650 million in Varabonds is what I think they try and make in this.
But he also has his own character in a sense because this is something that we don't see with villains these days, where they have a character actor play a villain, and he has more emphasis on his character and on the way that the character actually works. Then when we usually see these type of villains, they're very like, "Ha! I'm big. I'm going to be big and a villain because I'm a big villain."
Yeah.
Ah!
We'll get into that. We'll get into that when we get into the fourth movie. Trust me.
Though, isn't this? I could be wrong, but isn't this the reason that Hollywood fell in love with casting Brits as bad guys, even if they weren't British? But they basically, because of this movie, just went. Apparently, the British make brilliant bad guys.
It wouldn't shock me if that was the case. I mean, Die Hard really did set a huge standard for action movies. It's funny, and this is the question I want to ask. Why is that? Why do you think this movie was the one that kind of set the stage for pretty much most of the action movies in the 90s? I mean, most of the movies after Die Hard could be described as Die Hard in a boat, or Die Hard in a stadium, or Die Hard, you know, in another skyscraper or something.
Well, I can answer it with my opinion. I think everyone suddenly realised in movie land, I guess they clearly missed the novel. I don't know how close this is to the novel, because I think the novel's a short story novel, isn't it? Or novelette. But they all suddenly realised that they missed an obvious pony or missed an obvious trick, which was, you know, confined space. You know, terror within confines, and just went, shit, turns out, right, we don't need a bloke running all over the world, which is contradiction to 3, but we'll get to that, obviously. Don't need a bloke running all over the world and flying to different countries and fighting terrorists everywhere. Turns out that you can just stage it in one specific location, and by confining it in that area, also you make the movie cheap production-wise, but it adds a whole new element to this you know, trapped man, outnumbered. And I think all the other studios just went, shit, we missed something obvious on that. And then they were all playing catch up and ripping it off.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because it's something that I forgot to mention is why the character of John McClane worked, and we really do need to focus a lot more on Bruce Willis,
because he wasn't an action. He was a cop, but he wasn't superhuman. It was one of the first action movies where he wasn't superhuman. You see him bleed in this. You see him get the shit kicked out of him in this. You know, he's a wisecracker, wise ass, but he's ultimately vulnerable. And human, so you invest in him.
But and that, like I said, that's something that carried over into more movies as we went along. But go ahead, Burhan.
Well, basically, there is that whole idiom behind it of, in the book, his character actually dies from his injuries. So this...
Sorry, people, spoilers.
Well, if you haven't read the book by now, you're never going to. But it's
it's spoiler alert.
I was, but I'm not now.
Yeah, spoiler alert. So does John Rambo in his book.
Yeah, it's one of those things where
do you want to tell people that Father Christmas is not real as well, by the way?
Well, you've already done that, Dave. You horrible man.
Oops, sorry.
But
the Tooth Fairy is.
I always said to my mum, there was only one fat guy who brought me presents. His name wasn't Santa. Anyway.
Please don't tell me it was Jimmy Savile.
No, it was my dad.
Let him finish, Dave. Let him finish. Go ahead, Burhan.
It was one of his many injuries. Anyway, the factoid is here, they kind of tweaked that for the movie, because, you know, one of the whole conditions of them casting his character is they didn't want him to die, because if they had him die, he was a father going home to his daughter, you know, it kind of would have had the situation of what the fuck, you know, so Fox kind of cleaned it up a little bit, but based on the book, his character actually does die kind of off. You know, in context, they surmise that he dies at the end from his various injuries, and Cinema Sins actually did a kind of like an assessment of Die Hard to find out how many injuries Bruce Willis would have had
That's
and
right.
how he
You
would have
said
died.
this to me.
Yeah, and I was crying with laughter because literally he would have died by the elevator shaft. That was it. He would have been dead.
Oh, I had that epiphany when I was watching the third one. I was like, you should be dead 7 times over at this point.
Yeah, I think they
Well, it's
said
but
on the first
we
one,
go
like, he was
back to
dead-
the point
he was
you were
dead back
making
to
about
12 times.
Sorry, carry on.
No, it was like 12
I do have
times
a valid
over he
point
would have
there.
been dead, basically.
Yeah.
Fractured jaw, internal organ explosion.
Yeah. Also, like,
No, but the point I think we
boiling
fell in love
his
with the character
insides.
Oh, boys, one at a time. Burham first.
Yeah, boiling his insides, basically from the elevator explosion. it was hilarious actually seeing it. Sorry, Dave.
Oh no, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just the point I want to make and why he became something movie studios also jumped on. Going back to Miguel's point, which is, which I would say he's a vulnerable hero because at this point in movie land, it was stuff like Schwarzenegger, and Stallone. It was literally like, I like this movie and I like the character, but ultimately he's pinned down by 25 blokes with guns and he's got a toothpick. I know he's going to get out of this because he's fucking Schwarzenegger. But in this movie, you are pensive for like when he's crawling down the elevator shaft and stuff on the rope, and he drops. He's like you are pensive throughout it because you do very much invest in him as, all right, again a police officer, but an everyday bloke. He's not superhuman, so that certainly adds a definite element to the excitement in the movie because you don't think for any minute that he's just going to fucking Arnie out and kill everyone with a fucking minigun from a helicopter. You generally think, oh, that was a close one, or oh my god, no idea how you did that and how you getting out of this, McClay.
Yeah, and I do want to bring up one thing that I think Willis brings to the character that I can't imagine. I can only imagine one other actor bringing this to that character, and that is a sense of humor, which you didn't see in most action movies. I mean, when was the last time you saw Arnie at that point in his career, making wisecracking jokes to people? I mean, it was you got them here and there, but it really is Willis's charisma that makes John McClane as much of a standout and really as timeless as he has become.
Yeah,
I mean,
This is like with Bruce Willis, he was always had those snappy, sarcastic remarks. It was always fluid. The pacing was great. With Arnie, this is basically how.
Here's line in the script, I must say, in funny voice.
Pretty much, it's like the guy was like, "You die, asshole." He's like, "No, you die, asshole." They're like, "Yay!"
I think though, couldn't you argue that? And this is the way I interpret it. That a lot of McClane's humor in this was kind of a man out of his sort of out of his league, and it was what people do when they quit in real life, which was a defense mechanism, which is I'm fucked here, kids. There's no way I'm getting out of this, so it's a natural defense, isn't it? Humor.
You never got the sense that he was taking the piss out of the situation. You just felt like this was just his reaction to it. It's the difference.
The elevator shaft sequence when he's crawling on and he breaks out his cigarette lighter is a brilliant example of that. When he's like, we'll get together. We'll have a few laughs, and it's just to me it's like someone just trying to make light of their situation because he knows I'm fucked.
Yeah, it's the difference between obviously something like Bruce Willis in Die Hard and Steven Seagal in his movies where he's just saying one-liners at this point. This doesn't feel like canned one-liners that are there for a laugh track. This seems like something you and I would say, honestly. Yeah,
every day.
Well, yeah, it's basically Bruce Willis making the role his own. That's the main thing about it. And John McClane is an extension of Bruce Willis, and it's one of the things that I'll allude to in a little while when we talk about Die Hard 4. Because part of that...
Do we have to talk about Die Hard 4?
We do, and part of that is basically something that Bruce Willis said about the John McClane character. And again, we'll talk about that in a little bit when we go into it, but it's...
he's a hero that bleeds, basically.
Yeah, but
that's where his humor comes from.
The character was an extension of him, and for anybody out there, and if you talk about like all these, like Downey Jr. and Hugh Jackman having characters that are based on them, and characters that could probably go on without them, but they kind of couldn't survive without those characters, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they
Bruce
could bond
Willis-
this guy.
Yeah,
Then,
Bruce Willis made John McClane, and you couldn't really see anybody in John McClane's shoes, in a sense, because
Yeah, I mean,
the snappy,
Go ahead.
the snappy jokes, the comedic timing, everything, the organic kind of flow that you saw with the character, the pacing, everything seemed very sort of high impact, high pressured. But it's also someone who was just like, hey, I'm fucked, so I'm just gonna say whatever the fuck I like.
And also the fight scenes, something I want to touch on, which is the fight scenes. They're not traditional Hollywood fight scenes at this time when this movie came out, which I think other people jumped on, which is, again, coming back to vulnerability, is he doesn't superhuman them, you know. He almost flukes half of them, and, you know, by sheer luck. And it's just, when he's involved in combat in this movie, it's not like, I am Arnie, I will break your neck in a second. It's like, there's a genuine sense of fear when the character is forced into a situation, which is, it's like, do or die, otherwise I'm dead. And, you know, it's just, I like that element, you know, like the fight scene at the end. Sorry, people, spoilers, but again, you haven't seen this, sort your life out. You know, when he takes the chains and stuff, it's yeah, he's not a superhuman superhero like we got in all the blockbusters before this. He is essentially your bloke on the street who is put in an awkward, you know, unwanted situation and does what he has to do to survive, but does it badly because he never said he was like a fucking black belt ninja or anything, if that makes sense.
yeah.
He does a lot of what he does out of desperation. You can tell he's like, he's trying to
That's
survive.
what I was looking for, the term.
Yeah, he's trying to survive, and there's no fucking rule book that tells you how to survive. You just got to do it. And it's a big
By the way,
thing.
that scar on his arm is real. Do you know that?
Never knew that. Did he have a fight with
It's
Sybil
in various
Shepherd and she
movies.
cut him like a bitch?
Well, I guess also one of the first times you see someone properly bleed, when I talk about the vulnerability, is the sequence where he has to run over glass and he knows he has to and he's got no shoes.
Yeah.
And then
He's got to second guess himself on that one.
Yeah, and he calls the cop, doesn't he? And then he goes quiet on the radio and he's washing his feet and he's pulling chunks of glass out of his feet. And it's like, I don't think you've ever seen a main sort of action hero or, you know, star of a movie at this point get literally quite so banged up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the cop, because I do want to bring up Reginald L. Johnson, who pretty much is like a more fleshed out Carl Winslow in this movie. Like, I part of me kind of, am I the only one who watched it and kind of thought, I really want this to be in canon with Family Matters? Like, I want this to be like the backstory where he started off in Nakatomi. He started off working in LA and was like, all right, I gotta move to a different city. Then he moves to New York, and then the Ghostbusters thing happened. So he's like, all right, this time I'm moving to Chicago. There's nothing that could happen there. Like, I almost want to think that that's kind of the pace. Like, wait a minute, did Ghostbusters come out before Die Hard? So it would have been, he would have started off in New York, moved to LA, and then moved to Chicago. Okay, that's my headcanon then. But yeah, I did like the little backstory they gave him. They really fleshed him out to where...
Yeah, for such a minor role, they really, you know, gave him like that deep element, the whole, you know, accidentally shoot someone.
Yeah,
And,
he gets his redemption at the end.
Yeah. Plus he's
Call
awesome
of
with
Duty,
the FBI blokes.
Black cops. No?
Yeah, I really... What was that?
I said Call on Duty, Black Cops. So bad.
All right,
Could've
so...
been.
Yeah, that... I wish I had...
There's one minor I have to point, because no, we're a movie show, but I have to point out the one inconsistency or the one blooper fuck up element in this movie, which is when he gets the attention of the police officer, you know, who turns up chewing a Twinkie, as American police officers do.
Yeah.
We chew energy bars in this country because we don't have guns, so we need to be fit. Sorry.
Well, we do have guns
and
when some of us work out in the gym. Buddha!
Bruce Willis, you know, shoots it in with the M60 through the window, which is a great way to get a police officer's attention. But I love the fact that Bruce Willis is so, I know it's an action movie, but he's so restrained with the way he fires, or skillful, shall I say, for a police officer who's never used a military weapon, that he finds a way to shoot the cop car with a military-grade weapon that's actually armor-piercing, that doesn't manage to hurt the copper, and then it cuts straight back to him looking through the window, and he just goes, "Welcome to the party, pal." But
I
he's
love that line.
at that point, he's actually just holding his Beretta. So it does make me wonder if there's an alternative scene where he tries to get his attention with the Beretta. Go and watch it back. You'll see what I mean. The cut is so quick. He's firing the gun, and then he goes, "Welcome to the party, pal." And you're like, "Where's your fucking? It's not even in the window anymore. Where's your fucking machine gun?" Now you've just got your Beretta.
I'll definitely have to keep that in mind the next time it pops up on TV or.
Don't get me wrong. It's a great scene. I love.
Oh no, it is a great scene. I love that part. I love his line delivery in there. But we got to move on to the next movie because this movie was a massive hit, and you knew that they were going to make a sequel to Die Hard.
If you
and
didn't,
we got
then you should have known.
Yeah. So in 1990, we got Die Hard 2, Die Harder.
I love that title, by the way. I know people laugh at it, but I love it. It's so 90s.
Yeah.
It is so 90s. It's like, how can we make this sound more cliche?
This one also based on a book. This one was based on the book 58 Minutes, which is about a... Let's see, let me check the synopsis for 58 Minutes. Divorced NYPD cop. Yeah, basically it's about a guy who takes over an airport and leaves all the airplanes stranded, and basically it's the premise for Die Hard 2. It's the exact same premise that they used for the movie. Worth mentioning though, this time they could not get John McTiernan to come back, so this time they decided to go with director Renny Harlin. And I believe this was probably his first big-budget movie. Let me check his filmography. Yeah, this was, because up until this point, he had only done Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. So yeah, this was his first big-budget movie. He would later go on to do Cliffhanger and, unfortunately, Cutthroat Island. Although he did win me... he directed both Cliffhanger, the Stallone mountain climbing movie,
which you can say is definitely a Die Hard type movie.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he also directed Cutthroat Island, that infamous, the infamous pirate movie that lost more money than any other film for the longest time. I don't think it's been dethroned. He did do Deep Blue Sea though, which I will always.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I will always forgive him for doing Deep Blue Sea. So that's something, but. You can tell this is a different director, and I said this before when I saw it recently with Burhan. I was like, I like the first 90 minutes of this movie.
Really? I love this movie.
No, I don't think it's a bad movie. The big problem is pacing for me. Whereas McTiernan knew how to pace out a 2-hour-plus film, I don't think Renny Harlin really knows how to do that because the movie is constantly throwing stuff at you. It's nonstop action sequences. And like I said, the first 90 minutes are great. After 2 hours, it just gets really tiring.
I'll tell you what, I agree with you. The first movie, while they're roughly the same length, it flies by in a second. But yeah, that's something that now you say that, it does dawn on me that even though I love this movie, every time I watch it, I am aware that I'm watching it, that it feels very long.
Yeah, like to me, the movie could have ended when they got to the church at the beginning of the third act. Like at that point, if that would have been the climax when they're on the snowmobiles and he's flying around and he's chasing after the villains, I'd have been like, all right, you could just end it right here. It'd be perfectly fine. But it keeps going after that, and I'm just like, all right, keep going. Like I don't hate the movie. The movie is not bad. I mean, I think the action sequences are really great. I think Bill Sadler as kind of this insane, rebellious this rebellious general that's trying to hijack.
Wasn't he Death in Bill and Ted?
I believe so. Yeah, he was the guy that played Death in Bill and Ted. But the whole him trying to get this dictator, that's going to give him lots of money, and I thought the whole dynamic there was great. It's just. This movie just need better pacing. It just too much was thrown out there, and it got tedious for me. And I really
there's something I would say that comes back to what Mike said about Bruce Willis, which is different director that you can tell is a different director. But as a kid, I could not, simply because even though people consider that I mean I like this movie, people consider this weak compared to the first, but the way Bruce Willis plays it is literally, thanks to him, a continuation of the first movie in the sense that he turned up and he showed his A game, and we get McClane exactly the same as we did in the first movie.
Oh yeah, he does not miss a beat at all.
Yeah, but that's because, you know, he's still very young in his career. Was this done after Hudson Hawk?
I believe so. Let me check the Bruce Willis filmography.
I want to say before, ever so slightly.
Let me scroll down to his filmography.
Which, by the way, I like Hudson Hawk.
I do too. Hudson Hawk was 91. Die Hard 2 was 90, so this was before Hudson Hawk.
Would you like to swing on a star?
Yeah, I've from what I've seen of Hudson Hawk, I really like the humor in it. Like it's a goofball movie, and it's
like a PG-13 version of John McClane's character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, again,
he's a comedic actor in it, but it's Bruce Willis just playing this kind of goofball, everyday man sense of humor bloke.
But it didn't do
what
as
I'm basically trying to say is, I'm pretty sure if I had a beer with Bruce Willis, he would make me laugh because he sounds like he's got a wonderful sense of humor.
90s era Bruce Willis, yes. Modern day Bruce Willis, he probably just...
Bruce Willis would probably just make fun of you and talk about how he doesn't want to be in your area.
Yeah,
what was... And he does Virgin Cable adverts. What's the movie where he got his slung out in the swimming pool?
I have no idea.
He made a sex movie. Not a sex. He made a kind of, you know, capitalizing on the success of Basic Instinct movie, believe it or not. Color of Night?
Let's see. That would have been...
And there's the infamous where he's about to shag the bird in the swimming pool, and the camera... and you can see its schlong flowing freely in the water. And I always remember thinking, you know, I was a young adult at this point, which is, brave move there, Bruce. I'm pretty sure this is going to come back and bite you.
On my strong, see it glistening in the pool.
Yeah, it would probably be the that movie, because from what I've just seen of the cover art for the movie, I'm like, yeah, that looks like something that was ripping off of Basic Instinct.
Would you like to sing? Give me a second, I'll get it in your thong. Sorry.
But yeah, like I said, I don't hate Die Hard 2. I think to me it's just...
Again, though, by the way, the director clearly nicked from the original movie because it was a summer movie, but it's set at Christmas.
Yes, it is. He really does. And it does feel... I'd honestly say it feels a little bit more like a Christmas movie because it shows kind of the whole pre-Christmas, you know, hectic airport kind of thing that, you know, anybody who's traveled during the holidays knows exactly how that feels. He really does capture that really well.
It's got that brilliant sequence where he loses his gun in like the racks or the transportation racks that take the baggage planes, and he ends up twatting the bloke in the face with a golf club.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really do like the way the movie... I love the premise of it. I think, like I said, a tighter edit of it could have made this like really...
There's a director's cut of this as well, by the way. Did you know that?
It's longer. There's a longer version of this movie.
I love the way
only like
Miguel
by
just
3
goes-
minutes.
I love the fact Miguel just went, it's longer? Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, this, like I said, this thing feels every bit of its 2 hours, unfortunately, and I'm like, I can't imagine this being more than that, but
and there's
I guess
two
so.
cuts of it in this country. It's an interesting story. There's two cuts of it in this country. There's the original cinematic release that was an 18 certificate, and then the video release when it came out, and the after Watershed TV release, that's a 15 certificate. And for the longest time, I didn't know the 18 version existed because I actually watched it. You know, I bought an ex-rental. You know when video stores would sell off some of their tapes that weren't available to the public at that time in the high street? I remember, and they came in the really big cases. In this country, they came in really big cases.
Yeah, the big boxes.
Yeah, to say I'm, you know, a video store release, not a high street release. And yeah, I remember buying this and watching it and loving it. And one of the key sequences, or two sequences that I remember, that I actually watched the 18 version when I was on holiday in Boston at my dad's uncle's house, and just going, wait a minute, there's more to Die Hard 2 than I thought there was. You know when they're in the church? And he goes, there's some C4 and the motherfucker's armed. When in the video version, it just goes, hey, mate, there's some C4 over here and the mother's armed. And
you gotta love those '90s era censors that they would do because it's always funny. Like nowadays, they're a little bit more sly about it, where they'll actually record an alternate version of a line and kind of slide it in there. But back then, they would just like
this was on the VHS copy, mind.
Yeah, they were basically just unapologetically bleep something out.
Yeah,
And the bit when he cuts the whole group of soldiers that get sent there to save them, but are ultimately on the same side.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry, people. Spoilers. On the same side as William Sadler, and they get a new guy, and so they end up cutting his throat in the truck.
So
that was cut. You just saw them hold. You just saw them hold the knife to his throat, and then it stopped. And the bit when Bruce Willis stabs the bloke in the eye with the ice.
Yeah, you guys have some weird rules when it comes to violence. Like usually it's
because in cinema it was an 18, but on the VHS release it was a 15. All I remember was the first time I saw this, and we now have it, but the first time I saw it like in the 18 rate, well, you guys call it 17, but version in the States at my dad's uncle's house, my dad's brother's house. I just remember thinking, oh my god. This is like a different fucking movie.
Yeah. I do have to say one thing that did kind of irritate me about this movie was the B plot with William Atherton, who...
Oh, he didn't need... Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. We forgot to mention him. He pops up in the first movie as kind of the annoying TV reporter who basically...
Well, not just annoying. He makes the situation worse, doesn't he?
Yeah. And in this movie, they decided to bring him back. But honestly, I thought that sitting there watching it, you could really have cut most, if not all, of his scenes out and not really lost anything. Like his...
It's a comic farce. All his stuff on the plane is a comic farce.
It's somebody basically who's just sat there and went, I thought that's funny. So we're just going to get him to basically come back because some producer thinks he's hilarious.
I mean,
that was the studio. That wasn't the director's choice.
It's definitely an in-joke.
Yeah, like I was waiting for his plot to pay off, and honestly, aside from McClane's wife getting the upper hand on him, there wasn't really much of a reason for him to be on there except just as a callback.
Yeah.
The only thing I will say, even as a teenager at this point, I don't know what it was like in the States, post 9/11 in current terrorist state of the world. But even as a teenager, I remember watching that movie, and when the lady, which is, sorry people, spoilers, how they end up sorting this bloke out on the plane, sat next to her, pulls out her taser. I just remember thinking, how the fuck? All right, it's the 90s, but how the fuck did you get your taser through airport security?
I thought the exact same thing when I sat there. I'm like, good old 90s airplanes. When you could bring a taser onto a flight and no one would notice.
Now you can't even bring a bottle of cough syrup.
Yeah.
Or if you look brown, get ready to get yourself fucking anally raped.
Yeah, you can't...
Quiz time, people, by the way. What is the cartoon they watch on the plane?
Ooh, I forgot. I believe I saw it briefly, but I don't remember.
By the way, for you UK fans,
Simpsons.
One of the funniest things from those eras of movies, there used to be a gentleman who sat there and did the BBFC thing, the announcements. That guy's basically, his name is Simon Bates. I met him twice. First time was when he was in hospital. I was a hospital porter for the Wellington Hospital. The second time, when I was doing the security at the Olympics, he turned up there. He's an awesome fellow. Oh. We still stay in contact, believe it or not.
Get him to do me a sexy biscuits.
I'll make sure I get him to do it.
Something I think we do need to talk about in this movie, though, which is, and I agree with you, Miguel, it was like the elephant in the room for me because I didn't notice it until you pointed it out, but was aware of it, that makes sense, which is it's very, very long. But at the same time, the action sequences in this movie are, I at least think, not quite as good as the original, but they're very, very polished, and there's still that sense of how the fuck is he going to get out of this?
Yeah,
like the skywalk fight scene where he shoots the bloke on top of the scaffolding and then pulls the scaffolding down, and he's stuck on the conveyor belt, and he has to get the rod to turn it off, or turn it on, sorry, to get his gun and shoot Robert Patrick, I believe.
Yeah, that surprised me when I saw that. I'm like, ooh, that's Robert Patrick. That's interesting. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Rennie Harlan,
He may not know pacing, but he does do good action.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it. I've always thought Rennie Harlin, for a '90s director, was a pretty solid popcorn movie director. In fact, I'll mention one that I think he kind of harkens to later on when we talk about the fourth movie. But yeah, like I said, I don't hate Die Hard 2. I just think it's way too long. A much tighter film probably would have been better. It has great action.
Really like to see a fan edit. I'm sure they're out there. I must look. I'm sure there's a fan edit where they kind of trim it to what it should be.
And looking at the budget for this movie was a huge leap in budget. I mean, the first movie was like, I believe you said 28 million.
Yeah.
This one was a $70 million budget.
What did it take? Not domestically.
Box office wise, $240 million. So it made 4 times its budget back.
Wow.
Which is pretty good, and it pretty much guaranteed another sequel.
I do know that when the movie shows we had once a week in this country saying the top 10, I do remember, as a teenager, that this movie was #1 in this country at least for like 7 weeks. It was ridiculous. Can I just do the person pointing out that something that it just makes me laugh, and I know you suspend belief in an action movie, but the plane he does the ejector seat out of?
Yeah.
Those planes don't have ejector seats. And second of all, the fact that if you do have an ejector seat, you can't walk for a couple of days because it compresses your spine by an inch. But good old John McClane, he just gets up and walks it off in 5 seconds.
I believe it. But yeah, this is where production gets a bit interesting when we move on to 1995 with Die Hard with a Vengeance, Die Hard 3.
I
the original.
love this fucking.
I will let you vent. I was actually going to give you a nice little intro about that, but I just had to pop in. But yeah, this one had an interesting production behind it. Initially, the original idea was it was going to be John McClane and his wife Bonnie on a cruise, like a second honeymoon of sorts. And the cruise ship actually gets taken over by terrorists, and he has to stop the terrorists from doing whatever they were going to do.
Oh my God! It's Speed 2.
Well, no, not Speed 2, because then Warner Brothers released Under Siege with Steven Seagal, and Fox was like, "Oh, our movie was very similar to that one. We got to scrap this idea." So they ended up going with one of the rejected scripts for, was it Lethal Weapon or Lethal Weapon 2? It was one of the Lethal Weapons. Let me check to see.
I like the fact that they went with a rejected script, but this is, by the way, people, you can laugh at me. I'll explain it when we talk about it a little bit later on, but this is my favorite Die Hard movie.
And I'll get into that in a second, but yeah, this was actually based off of a rejected script from Lethal Weapon. Well, was it Lethal Weapon? Let me see. I can't seem to find information on it, but I know it was one of the Lethal Weapon scripts that they had.
It was going to be Roadhouse 2.
No, let me Google search this, because I want to make sure that I have this right, because I'm not sure if it was Lethal Weapon 1.
I remember that for. It was a Lethal Weapon script. I believe it was for Lethal.
The Carry On movie. It was going to be Carry On Another Terrorist.
No, I think it was Lethal Weapon 3.
Oh no, 4th.
Oh, okay.
It was actually going to.
There's this whole domino effect in Hollywood, which is someone gets a movie out before someone else, and they're forced to change their movie, which means someone else is forced to change theirs, and so forth and so on.
But this was when the action genre was at its peak at this time, because there were action movies were coming out by the fucking truckload.
Oh yeah, 1995 I think was probably the last big year for the traditional action movie.
That was a massive year, by the way. I have to say this because that was the year I had a free cinema pass for a whole year to Canon Cinemas.
Yeah.
And so I saw a movie twice a week, every week, and 1995, like you said, for action movies was absolutely. And also for rom-coms, which I may or may not have seen because of the bird I was dating. But that was a very, very solid action movie, year in cinema. One of my favorites, in fact.
Yeah.
Plus, it was totally worth seeing. When you were sleeping, so I could bang Susie. Sorry.
Yeah. Apparently, the story is that it was actually written as the 4th Lethal Weapon film, but they decided instead to tweak it and go with Die Hard 3 instead. And honestly, having seen that, I could kind of see elements of that, the rapport between Samuel L. Jackson
never thought about that before.
Yeah, I mean, you could totally see Jackson and Bruce Willis almost like a different version of Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon. I mean,
and obviously the expansive environment.
Yeah, definitely.
But
It's a much
that's
bigger
one point
movie.
I want to make, though, which is it may be an expansive environment, but the way it's directed. Who directed this, by the way?
John McTiernan. McTiernan
nice.
returned to do the third movie.
Well, then that makes sense because it's set in a city and it's very expansive, but at the same time, because of the goals they're given and the way they have to interact with the terrorists and the tasks they have to perform, it does still feel claustrophobic.
Oh my god! You know what? I've just realised.
You simply should have said there was a fat lady on the phone.
No, McTiernan directed 12 Rounds, didn't he?
No, that was Rennie Harlan. Rennie Harlan
thank
directed
fuck.
12 Rounds.
But that's a similar concept to this movie, right?
I believe 12 Rounds was it was the guy calling the person with payphones and making him run around and do things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
pretty much the
essentially,
same
Rennie
thing.
Harlan.
That's the best element of this movie, though, isn't it? The whole, and it turns out, sorry people, spoilers, at the end it was nothing but an elaborate ruse for what they were really doing, which is, again, the terrorists were single-minded in their pursuit like the first movie, but he was basically ultimately toying around with the fact that this guy killed his brother, even though he openly admits he didn't like his brother, because obviously he's Hans Gruber's brother, isn't he, Simon?
Yeah. And that's something that I liked about this movie is it kind of felt less like a sequel and almost like a reimagining of the first movie.
Reboot.
Yeah, like let's take the first movie and we've got a bigger budget now. Let's really go all out and make, it's almost like McTiernan was like, all right, I got enough money. Let's make the movie that I really wanted to make, the first Die Hard. And I get why Burhan loves this movie, and actually I want to hear his thoughts on it. Burhan, why do you love Die Hard with a Vengeance?
The chemistry between Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis, and the fact that the movie just grabs your attention when you've just got like freaking McClane standing out there with a sandwich board saying "I hate N-words." It was literally you just sit there and go, "Why the fuck is he
I'm the
doing
voice
this?"
of what did he say? I'm the voice of my own reason in my head.
Yeah,
and then the
which
guy just,
I'll be honest, that was rough early on because obviously it was of the time. I mean, this 1995, it was post Rodney King. I mean, it was they were obviously capitalizing on the whole race relations thing, which, given the current environment we live in, it kind of made that it was slightly harder and a little bit more topical to watch. But honestly, I do agree that I think the chemistry between Willis and Jackson, Samuel L. Jackson, really works. And
Forced relationship, but ultimately 2/3 through they start to care about each other.
It's not
Yeah,
just that as well,
bigger
though.
game.
It's very snappy. These guys, like Samuel L. Jackson does Samuel L. Jackson like no other man. He's like panicky.
Yeah.
He's got that great line and goes, "What, you're going to call me the M-word?" He goes, "No, I was going to call you an asshole."
Yeah. And
these
sorry. And then there's this whole kind of chemistry between the two characters going on, and it's snappy back and forth, between the two of them. And again, it mirrors that kind of pacing from the first movie, but this time you times it by 2, and it works really well with the two characters. And it's
Like I
it's
said-
kind of-
It's got one of the greatest driving sequences in a movie ever as well. When he's going, the quickest way downtown is through the park, and he goes, "No, don't take the park. You can't do that. You got to take this." And he goes, "No, the park." And then he drives straight through the park.
the whole
And the
buddy
people are
thing
running
as
out the
well.
way. Samuel L. Jackson goes, "Jesus Christ, McClane, you trying to hit these people?" "No, well, maybe just that mine."
But it's,
I do love that line.
but
And then
it-
if you look really carefully, this is a pause you moment on your DVD,
Yeah.
but it's true, and it took my dad to spot this because he's a mechanic, and when someone in the room just ruins movies for you, but it's a good ruin. I'm not going to ruin it for you. When he comes back out of the park and they ever so slightly jump over the lip and land on the road, and you see the hubcap fly off the car?
Yeah.
Pause it. That ain't the hubcap. That's the wheel, but they cut away really quickly.
but it's
The whole
one of
wheel
those
comes
things-
off the car.
I did kind of notice that when I was looking at it. I'm like, wait a minute, that car is trashed. You can't keep driving it. And then it was like, oh, it's magically better. All right,
That's
fair enough.
Brilliant films. That's the way they do things.
The car was Wolverine.
Yeah, but the thing about it as well, they did something that they mirrored in the other Die Hard movies, they kept pairing him up with people from like after
Yes.
this movie specifically.
Yes. Because in the second one, it was janitor, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
The airport janitor.
Yeah, we'll talk about this a little bit more afterwards. So Miguel, as you were saying.
I was gonna say, yeah, Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson. You really can tell that these guys just have a chemistry to them, and that's why they've worked with each other so much. I mean, before this, it was Pulp Fiction. They worked with each other. After this, it was Unbreakable. But I mean, yeah, these guys really work together, and it kind of makes me wish there was like an alternate universe where instead of these guys working in the Die Hard movies, these guys were Riggs and Murtaugh in Lethal Weapon. Like I would love to watch a Lethal Weapon with these guys. Not that Glover and Gibson don't have a chemistry of their own, but these guys just got it. You know, they can just bounce off of each other, which is so great, and it really is. It really is the last time you see McClane acting like McClane, which we'll get into when we get into the fourth one.
I would totally agree with you on that statement, really.
Isn't it?
Because there are some great McClane moments in this where he is the character you fall in love with, like the elevator scene where they start talking about lottery numbers because he realizes when he looks at the other police officer's badge and that he twigs that he's a terrorist, that it's the badge number that his friend had or someone he knew at the precinct. And he starts going, hey, did anyone know the lottery numbers last night? Oh, my wife says never do these lottery numbers. I play the same ones. And then he shoots everyone through the back of his jacket. But it's just the banter before he does that is just, it's the character we love. And I agree with you, Miguel, because I think this is the last movie where we basically get McClane as McClane and not a typical polished summer blockbuster studio action guy. That makes
Bruce
sense.
Willis trying to be John McClane.
Exactly.
You know, it's the last one where the two characters really felt like
Plus
one
the
and
constant
same.
running joke about wanting aspirin.
Which actually has a payoff. I love that actually does have a payoff at the end, and it's the whole reason why the villain gets caught. I do want to point out Jeremy Irons as the villain. I'm a big mark for Jeremy Irons as well. I think he plays a great villain.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty much the only reason why Dungeons and Dragons is worth watching.
I actually quite like that movie, known it, but don't tell
that
anyone.
movie is a big sack of shit.
But Jeremy Irons is so wonderful in that movie. He chews
He
so
has
much
the
scenery.
best line in the movie, which is, said Simon to the pieman, give me some pies, or I cave your head in.
Isn't he in Aragon as well?
Aragon, yeah,
Yes.
I believe so.
Again, he was the best thing about that movie too. Shame.
Oh, there's something we're missing here, which I think we got to talk about, which is the traps they set, even though it's ultimately a ruse for them to stall and just make, Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson run around, the houses. But some of the traps they come up with are ingenious. And there's one I will ask you, which is when they're in the park and they have to defuse the briefcase bomb about getting a certain amount of water into the other jug. And it's one of those moments where everyone gets to the end of the scene in the cinema and just goes, oh, that makes sense. Well, I'll tell you what, write that sketch down there. The next time you're in the pub with your mates, try and work it out. It's an absolute mind fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that popping up on like a test in school, and just I didn't even get it back then. Like I had to be like, I remember this from Die Hard 3. Why can't I understand this?
Yeah.
You don't realize how hard it is until they put it in your face, and it's like, oh, this is
Yeah.
actually very difficult.
But that's my point. When you hear the resolution, you're like, oh, I'm a smart guy. That makes sense. I could do that. But if someone doesn't tell you that, hindsight's a wonderful tool and just gives it to you, just like, oh no, Basil, now I've gone cross-eyed.
Yeah.
The one thing as well about it is, did you know apparently they may be having Samuel Jackson return for the next installment?
Well, John McTiernan is rumored to be taking the sixth Die Hard movie, and he said that if that's the case, he wants to bring back Samuel L. Jackson and kind
They're all
of.
too old, but at the same time, I don't want an indie version of this, like Indiana Jones. But at the same time, if he comes back and they put Sam Jackson in it, I'm sold.
We'll get to that when we get to the fourth and fifth ones.
By
But
the way, I
yeah,
have to say, one of my favourite sequences in this movie is when they're trapped or tied together at the bomb, on the boat at the end.
oh yeah,
They're
the
talking
Kemp-
about he's a locksmith, and he goes, so you need something like so and so long and so big, and he's like, yeah, but we ain't got that. And he could like, hang on, and then he pulls that steel splinter out of his shoulder with his teeth.
Oh God, yeah, I remember that scene.
But then there's the chemistry right there, which is he doesn't leave Jackson when the bomb's about to go off.
No, I do like that scene. It's like lean forward. Why? Just lean forward. No, what are you gonna do? Bam! Ah! And he blows up his handcuffs, which was actually pretty smart. Like I actually really dug that.
The school sequence as well, by the way, that was even though the terrorists actually showed they killed loads of people, they had heart and they didn't blow up the children. But the school sequence where the bloke, the bomb dismantling guy from the police, refuses to leave. Even though all the one kid's trapped in the building, isn't he? That's a really, really intense moment.
It is. I mean, I went into it knowing that it was a fake bomb because I had read the synopsis. But if I hadn't known that and just watching it at face, yeah, that was a.
What does he say at the end when it's spraying him in the face? It's raspberry juice.
Pancake syrup.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Die Hard 3, like I said, I have difficulty saying it's the best in the series. I still gotta go with...
I have no qualms saying it's my favorite, and I would say it's the best. And as you said, Miguel, it's definitely the last official, truly Die Hard movie.
I think it was probably the best acted. In terms of buddy movies go, I think it worked really well for what it was.
God, Aspen, I got a really bad fucking headache.
And it was enjoyable as well, because it really...
And his wife's in it, doesn't she? He makes a cameo. Not his wife, but the character's wife does make that cameo, doesn't she?
Yeah, on the phone.
Which is where he has his epiphany, where you say that actually pays off with the aspirin.
Yeah, which I really dug that whole wrap up and just the way that ended. But
the only thing I will say, even though there's lots of fight and action in this movie that are brilliant. And there's that brilliant bit where Samuel L. Jackson breaks the car window with the gold bar. That's brilliant. Can you go any faster? I can't. It's a Yugo.
It's like, man, that guy's gonna be mad that you stole his car. It's like, don't worry, I left something in the back for him to pay him. It's like, man, you left my gold bar. Oh.
The only thing I will say off is I enjoyed it, but compared to other Die Hard movies, even though McClane always got his ass kicked in the final fight, I wanted a final fight. It gave closure and I liked it, but the whole, sorry people, spoilers, but shooting the cable and it wraps around the rotor blades, I just thought that was a cheap way to end. I wanted a confrontation, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but that doesn't detract from the movie. I love it, but
you basically wanted a McClane versus Carl fight from the first movie.
Yeah, because he's a bad. We didn't touch upon that. You think his brother camped it, the actor camped it up, but he's an absolutely cold-hearted bastard in this. And there's something else where McClane gets under his skin, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he starts to stutter.
No, he was faking that. The stutter was there to lead them off to thinking that he was losing control. He was actually leading them on with that because he pokes fun at that.
I thought McClane got under his. Oh, you've just ruined this movie. Sorry, 2's my favorite now.
Yeah, 0 stars. But yeah,
what's that, Simon? Stop.
By the way,
I love that.
Just before we continue, I just have to get over the fact that Patty's saying things on here. She goes, "I come into It's Longer." That's what she said. Officially my entrance cue. Die Hard 3, sexy ass Jeremy Irons. I love Under Siege. Laughing out loud. 3 is my fave too. High fives. It's hilarious and balls to the wall action. Jeremy Irons. See, he's so hot she had to say it twice. Hot, and amazingly brilliant. Honestly, okay with as many Die Hards as possible with more Samuel Jackson. So that's what Patty said. We'll continue with the Patty.
And Die Hard 4 came. She just sent me a message. Die Hard 4 came out on her birthday.
Poor thing. I do want to say one last thing, and this is the big reason why I think, as much as I like 3, it's not my favorite, and the reason is, honestly, it does take a little bit longer to get going than the first movie does. Honestly, it's a much slower build, and honestly, it kind of loses me in that in the first act. It isn't
the initial sequence is straight in there when they're playing. I forget the singer's name, but they're portraying this. It was so much like Predator 2. They're portraying that it's really, really hot, and you got the song going hot down. What's it?
Oh,
hot
Summer
down,
in the
Summer in the City.
Yeah.
back of my neck getting dirty and gritty, and then the building blows up and all the cars fly across the street. Because I remember in the cinema when I saw that, I'm just like, all right, let's not waste time, people here.
That was fine, but for that first act, there's a lot of it's basically just watching McClane and Samuel L. Jackson just run around from place to place. They didn't really establish the plot too much until...
I think the initial first act is just basically setting up that McClane is in a bad place now, though.
Well, it's that, and it's kind of also foreshadowing. It's just a way for them to get these two together. In a sense, you know, the meat and two potatoes and like your Christmas turkey, as you will, in this is when these guys get together, and that's what the greatest point of the movie is.
And also, very much, Samuel L. Jackson in this movie, and they set the scene up before he goes out, and you know, when Bruce Willis has got the sandwich board on him, but when the kids come in with the stolen goods, and he's like, you know, what you doing, you know, and you know, go back to school and stuff. Pretty much, Samuel L. Jackson is McClane's moral conscience in this movie.
Yeah, because McClane's like a loose fucking cannon in this one. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah,
because like I said, his marriage is falling apart. Because if you actually watch it and pay attention, the night before this event happens, he was on an all-night bender because he's suspended. In fact, they reinstate him, don't they? Because Simon makes him.
I mean, it's funny that this was based off of a Lethal Weapon script because he's basically Riggs in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch the first Lethal Weapon, you could see the similarities between McClane and Riggs in the way he's portrayed.
But again, it's done with that little Bruce Willis flavor.
Bruce Willis is not massively anti-Semitic.
What was that?
It was done with a bit
of
Bruce
by the way,
flavor to it as well.
Sorry, carry on. No,
okay.
It's like a Lethal Weapon movie, only in this movie, Bruce Willis is not massively anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just talking about.
He was trying to do a Mel Gibson joke, and Patty goes, "Miguel, I see your point, but I'm sorry, you are not being saved when the zombies come."
Fair enough. Hopefully, she and I can agree on the fourth movie because this one. Let me go into a little bit of an introduction.
Can I just make a soundbite before you say this? When I first started talking to Miguel through PMs tonight, and he was watching this one, you struggled with this, didn't you?
Yeah, this movie got me. Before I get into why I dislike this movie, let me just start off with the production on this because this movie was actually meant to come out, I believe, in the early 2000s. It was based on an article that was written in the late 90s about the concept of the fire sale, which is the idea that as technology gets more and more advanced and more in place, that at some point it's going to get so big that anybody could basically hack in to a series of computers and basically take over everything. They basically took that concept and wrote out the initial script for Die Hard 4, which was actually going to be called Die Hard 4.0 before they changed it to Live Free or Die Hard.
No, over here it's
called
4.0
in this country.
Because we don't do American stuff.
Well, that was the concession because Bruce Willis wanted it to be named 4.0. The director wanted it. The studios were the ones that were like, no, we got to come up with something clever. And they were like, let's call it Live Free or Die Hard because I think it's based off
with a license plate.
Yeah, I think it's based off of like a state slogan. I forget.
The funny thing is, I forget what state is it. But what I find funny is that all my North American friends, I'm not basing this on Hollywoodland, but all my North American friends say, you got the better title in the UK.
Well, 4.0 was supposed to be a reference to the whole technological aspect of it, because it's supposed to be very tech-savvy and was supposed to be, very much modern. And unfortunately, I think that's the movie's downfall, because this movie, man... This movie...
There are a few moments, I should say, not elements. There are a few moments in this movie I love where possibly he's almost McClane again, but the rest of it is just fucking summer blockbuster. It could have been any person in this movie. It wasn't a Die Hard movie.
No, I've got a lot of problems with this movie. My biggest problem was this movie has the technological sensibilities of like the Lawnmower Man.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that they were able to do in this movie is stuff you wouldn't be able to do now. I mean, the whole idea that one person with what basically amounts to the IT department at my job, basically, like I'm sitting there and I'm like, he's got guys that basically would be doing tech support for local colleges if this were real, and they
Is
were
it
able
the bloke
to.
from Transformers, the bad guy? I can't remember.
Timothy Oliphant, yeah, and I'll get into why I had disliked him in a bit, but I just really want to go off on this because honestly, I thought this was going to be a fun aspect. I was going to be like, oh man, this movie has no idea how computers work. This is going to be great. The problem is the movie plays it so seriously that I was just scoffing at the movie. I'm like, all right, none of this would happen in real life, and they're playing it like if it's an episode of 24.
And there's
And
also
I
a reasoning behind this as well, which I'll talk to in a bit. I'll let you wrap up on what you need to say.
Oh no, go ahead. You dovetail off of what I was going to say.
Okay, Bruce Willis basically, and this is a story that Kevin Smith was talking about. Apparently, Bruce Willis had this ego, I think, about him because every time he does a movie, he travels with his own writers. He had this big fuck off like bodyguard dude, and Kevin Smith goes up to the guys like, "Hey, you his bodyguard?" And the guy's like, "No. Why would you think I'm his bodyguard?" He's like, just looking at him, he's like, "You look like you work out."
Because you're big.
Yeah, and he's like, you said I'm dumb? He's like, no. And they're having this little dialogue, and Bruce then explains to him that apparently he's got like these 4 writers that always travel with him. And what they do is they do the script according to what Bruce wants, right?
Oh my god, he's got tweakers. And I don't mean people who shake their ass, but he's got... what an arrogant prick!
That's your first problem. Second problem, he gets Kevin Smith to join in and start helping him rewrite the script, right? So then he calls up the studio, and the studio he goes, "Yeah, did you get the rewrites?" And the studio's going like, "Yeah, Bruce. We had a script. It was a perfectly good script." He's like, "Yeah, yep. So who's your second choice to play John McClane?" And literally they just caved in and did whatever he wanted. And that was good for Kevin Smith's role in the movie because he was hired to act in the movie. He wasn't hired to do anything else. Because Kevin Smith's role, it was basic Kevin Smith. He sounded really nerdy.
Well, let me just start off by saying I didn't get far enough in the movie to see his role. Yeah. I tapped out about at the halfway mark.
But the rest of the movie suffered, and a lot of the suffering was the fact that the focus, some of it was due to studio interference, so the focus wasn't actually on Bruce Willis, it was on his sidekick, who was played by what's that dude's name? That
Justin Long.
Justin Long, who they pegged to be the next,
Mac guy, basically.
Yeah, to be the next big dude. He was pegged to be like the next kind of funny, nerdy guy in Hollywood because we're doing that now.
Yeah.
But that didn't kind of pay off for him, So he was in that. They were trying to big him up a little bit. He's dated the guy's daughter. Oh, hey. And then you have Bruce Willis's character playing a rather aged, cranky John McClane, which is basically
the only McClaneism he does is literally the opening of this movie where he goes into fucking the nerd boy's apartment from Jeepers Creepers, breaks his Spawn figure and stuff like that. And then takes the bloke out on the stairwell with the fire extinguisher and puts, like the refrigerator in front of the door. That's the only time in this movie that he feels like John McClane.
The problem with Bruce Willis as well in this, McClane is being played by Bruce Willis as he is now. The cranky,
McClane-lish.
Yeah, the cranky, asshole-ish Bruce Willis, not the fun-loving guy that we've seen previously.
I said it before when we talked about Die Hard 3 that in the previous Die Hard movies you really felt that Bruce Willis and John McClane were the same character, that he was basically just playing an extension of himself. In this one, it feels like Bruce Willis trying to play John McClane.
Do you think, going back to what you said at the start, Miguel, about something entirely different but kind of is relevant, do you think this was his paycheck movie?
I honestly think so, because up until this point, I can't think of many movies that he was doing. I know he did Unbreakable for Shyamalan before this.
Tears of the Sun, when was that?
That I remember the title, but I don't remember anything about that movie. Let me actually.
Oh, by the way, Tears of the Sun. I could be wrong on this. So look it up now. I think Tears of the Sun is actually a rewritten Die Hard script, by the way.
I would have to check. Let me see real quick.
But I will point out kind of quickly about it as well. he was doing a lot of independent films like Moonrise Kingdom and all that, so he was teetering back and forth, you know.
No, well, Moonrise Kingdom was several years after
Yeah, no,
this.
but he was making that decision to kind of do more serious roles, and mainstream Hollywood weren't giving him that. You know, they weren't giving him the big serious stuff. They wanted him to do more action movies, because for those who don't know, action movies kind of had a renaissance around that time. You know, they were coming back.
Yeah, because this was about around the same time that the Rocky remake, the sixth Rocky movie came out. I believe.
Yeah,
and Stallone was making his comeback.
2006, 2000. I think 2007 is this movie, isn't it?
I believe so. Let me check. Where is that link? Yeah, 2007. So yeah, a year after.
I do remember being in a cinema in Montreal, and there was a poster on the wall and it was actually called Die Hard, just Die Hard 4 then, on the wall in the theatre. And I remember thinking, oh sweet, there's a new Die Hard movie. And then imagine my surprise that they were advertising it a year before it came out. Yeah, not even in teaser trailer.
The thing about this movie was, it was literally the studio's attempt at reviving a dead franchise. That's all it was. And getting more.
Well,
it's the opposite of what McClane was, though, which was he was a vulnerable person who wasn't a superhuman. But in this movie, he's superhuman. You've only got to look at the sequence where the car spins when they're in the tunnel, and they survive by fluke and bounces off the other two cars. And then he takes he puts the car through the ramp and it takes out the helicopter. And he goes, "You took out a helicopter with a car?" And he goes, "I ran out of bullets."
Yeah.
And it's like, at this point, you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, mate. You're not John McClane.
No, it's got to the point now where it just got extremely ridiculous. It went from kind of the ridiculous, but you could pass over the fact that it is because it's some guy being desperate, to this guy's fucking Teflon. You know, you can't. And
this is a PG. Let's not forget, even though there is a director's cut, that still has the same thing that I hate about it at the end. You never saw, Miguel, but I'm going to tell you what it is, and you don't need to go back and watch it. But this was the first Die Hard movie that was a PG-13.
By the way,
I remember they specifically bleeped out the line.
Well,
they didn't bleep it out.
Who's joined us in the chat basically says, "I thought you were going to say it was a porno, Dave."
the line at the end where there's almost a kind of slight John McClane element at the end where he takes out, sorry people, spoilers, but you really don't need to watch this movie because it's shite. I mean, Christ alive, there's a fucking aircraft trying to take him out in a truck and he survives. That's not Die Hard.
It's basically,
it should be basic and hands-on.
Yeah, they're basically.
But yeah, right at the end, he shoots the bad guy through himself, and that's probably the last John McClane moment you will see, even though he's not been John McClane in this movie for so long, but he shoots the bad guy through himself. And then when the shit goes up and, finally kills the bad people, he goes, "Yippee-ki-yay, mother," and then there's an explosion in the background that means it's not a beep, Miguel, it's an explosion over the end of the word. And I just remember, and I think when I saw this in the cinema, I actually heard people saying, like, "Wait, we don't get the fucking line?"
Yeah,
I want my fucking money back.
That was an insult. And secondly, the fact is, they went too overboard with the effects in this. Or the explosions.
That final sequence with the truck and the plane is absolutely ridiculous.
And
yeah, that's the problem when you get Len Wiseman to direct your movie. Len Wiseman is basically a B movie version of Michael Bay. For those of you that don't know, Len Wiseman is the guy that directed the Underworld movies, and he also directed the Total Recall remake.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
There is one scene I will say. Well, it's not McClane's scene because he's not McClane in this movie. But there is the tension of the first movie with like falling through the stairwell, which is where but it's exaggerated. But I like it, which is where the car is in a stairwell. Sorry, a lift well.
Oh, are you talking about the scene with the Asian woman?
Yeah, that is tense. I will give it that. I like that scene, but he certainly ain't John McClane at that point.
No, he's basically Jason Statham at that point.
Yeah, it was basically the fact is this movie took itself too seriously. Everything about it was wrong, and Bruce Willis was at that certain level where he just didn't give a fuck anymore, and you could see.
But the thing is, on paper though, when they wrote it, before I'm going to say, it was his paycheck movie. He's fought terrorists his entire career at this point, so on paper. we're now in the modern world, and Die Hard 4.0. It's cyber terrorism now. So they could have used them. They could have done something so good with it if Bruce Willis wanted to be John McClane, but they just turned it into what I would like to call a Disney version of fucking Die Hard.
And we do have to point out the awful villain in this movie. I hated Timothy Olyphant. I mean, I like him in other things, but when you're coming off of movies where you had guys like Alan Rickman and Jeremy Irons, even Bill Sadler in the second one, to come up with this character who has no menace to him, and
telling me there was no one else you would have cast or wanted. I guarantee there would be a plethora of people who wanted to take the villain role in this movie. And
David, plethora.
Yeah, and I get it. They wanted to go with a much younger actor to kind of appeal to the youth audience and the whole cyber trendy thing, but. Man, I wish they'd have gotten somebody with a lot more gravitas, and the fact that they try to make the character a martyr of sorts, which that was the point that I gave up when
he didn't have at least his character. Maybe it wasn't his fault. Maybe it wasn't written well. But because I get what you're saying, but he didn't have like the kind of anguish or written in kind of just pissed offness to back up who he was supposed to be, if that makes sense. There was no passion, fire in his belly.
Yeah,
no
just like, I'm going to shoot you, get on the keyboard, this is my bird.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
like,
here's a good you want a good example. You want a good example of a great martyr character who brings passion to his character, and you kind of
Ramirez. Sorry.
Not even Ramirez. Go back and watch the movie The Rock with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. Oh. The Ed Harris character, the general who is basically he's trying to get money to pay off pay for his soldiers.
He's ever so slightly tortured by what he's doing.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing is right in his own head because he's doing it for the soldiers that died for him because they died over dubious circumstances. But at the same time, you understand why he's doing it, and you can see the anguish in him. This guy
sees innocent lives as something he has to take. He doesn't want to, but an ends, or means to his end. Sorry, but yeah, the guy in Die Hard 4 is just like, do this, go there, I'll shoot you. I'm cold-hearted. I'm anguished.
Yeah,
no, you're not, you fucking idiot.
Yeah,
they give you no fucking proper backstory.
He's not. He doesn't have the anguish to pull it off. He doesn't have the menace of an Alan Rickman to pull off that type of character. And honestly, if they wrote him as like some type of like anarchist, like a Tyler Durden, they didn't convey that either. So what you get is this weird grayish character that I did not care about.
Nothing more than a plot device.
Yeah. And like I said, when you're coming off of such great villains in the other movies, it irritated me. And like I said, when they tried to make him a martyr is when I gave up. I was like, nope, not doing this. And I shut the movie off. I couldn't finish it.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. It was one of those where it just... The movie in its own right could have been something great. The problem is John McClane wasn't within my issue with it. They tried to make
McClanerisms.
No, they tried to make him smart as well, which I think they should have played to the whole fact that he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. The sidekick, so to speak, was supposed to be the guy that tells him all this stuff. But in the end, he becomes unnecessary because McClane just takes it all on himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, McClane becomes the straight man. And to me, that was the downfall of the character because McClane was never really the straight man. He was always the guy that bounced off of the straight man. And I guess you could say that maybe they were trying to go for a much more mature John McClane, which I can kind of see.
Which is ironic because they went with a much more John McClane, but with a younger certificate and audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I said, this movie was all over the place, and I was actually looking forward to this movie. I was like, okay, this movie I think is sitting at an 8 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes, or an 80%. I mean, it's well received, so I was like, okay, it can't be that bad if the critics like it. No.
I sat through it in its entirety in the cinema, but I was disappointed. But the reason I sat through it was quite simply, I didn't want to waste £8, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I basically just saw this for free, and I'm not ashamed to say it because I would not want to pay for this.
There is one scene in this, by the way, which is kind of another. I will say there are like literally, but it's bad to say this that I'm trying to justify elements of it because I do dislike it. There are 4 or 5 moments in this movie where he is John McClane, but the rest of it he's just superhuman. And a lot of this sequence or scene is down to his sidekick, but it's the crashed Mercedes that they need to get driving again.
Oh, that scene where he has to basically pretend that his father's dying?
Yeah, I do think that was a really, really good scene, because that was kind of like, that's where McClane is playing off someone else like he used to, and he's out of his league, and it's like, this is never going to work. That felt like a McClane scene to me, but the rest of the movie was just like, I'm superhuman, I will fight you can beat me up, but I do not bleed.
Yeah.
I may get bashed around like I did in the other movies, but in the other movies you actually cared about me. In this movie you just think, meh.
And like I said, this was the movie that was critically acclaimed. I mean, critics like this movie, which is why I have pretty much decided not to invest in Die Hard 5, because
I will say this, by the way, Die Hard 5, it's not perfect.
Dude.
By no means perfect,
cannot
and it's very
justify that
stretched,
movie.
and it's absolutely, it's absolutely ludicrous in its plot compared to, I know it's a movie, but compared to any Die Hard movie. But there is more McClane as McClane, or Bruce Willis, I should say, as McClane in Die Hard 5 than there is in Die Hard 4. And that's a terrible reason to like a movie, but I own it on Blu-ray.
So wooden.
In my defense, yeah, I know, his son's a twat.
Yeah.
In my defense, I bought it on Blu-ray for $5, but I will say, even though it's a shit movie, I like it for one reason, which is, hey, look, McClane's back. Not McClane, not McClane, McClane's back. Not McClane, not McClane, McClane's back. And so there's like 25 or so moments where he is old school McClane.
And see, I actually, from what I've heard, it's actually the opposite effect. Like, they really downplay McClane to the point to where he's kind of a side character in his own movie. Like, they very much focus...
I know what you're saying. The critics say he was a side character to his own son, but the bits I'm talking about is when he's kind of by himself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's still...
Okay.
The problem is, when you do
It's still a terrible movie, don't
it's
get me
not
wrong.
a Die Hard movie.
No,
Yeah.
like,
Well,
it
no,
doesn't...
it's the same as this. I'm not saying it is a Die Hard movie. I'm just saying there is McClane in that movie. A lot more than this movie. And that's... By the way, Fox, pay attention. We're pointing out everything that's wrong with the direction you're going with this, but when I find solace in a movie because it's shit, but it has more McClane moments than your previous movie, based on a franchise that I loved, that was once dear to me, you're doing something wrong, people. You're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but bad things about this movie. And one of the big problems I've heard is that, yeah, Len Wiseman is not a great director. He's like Spielberg.
Oh, you talk about pacing.
Yeah.
When did you see the pacing in that movie? It's like break, stop. Have lunch, people. Go and get coffee. Oh wait, action. Stop. It's so badly paced. It's like watching someone sand your thigh with sandpaper.
Yeah, and John Moore cannot direct an action sequence from what I've seen.
And I agree with Burn. His son is such a wooden twat in it, which is a shame because some of the scenes at the end where he goes back to being McClane and being like a dad are kind of like, you're McClane! Now talk to the wooden bloke and ruin the scene completely.
Yeah, it's the same. The problem is, it's the same dude. They keep trying to throw down everyone's fucking neck. I forgot what the guy's name is.
Jay Courtney.
Yeah. They keep trying to push him as the next big thing, and I think what they're planning on doing was, if Willis didn't want to do the next Die Hard movie, they were just going to pop him in it.
Yes. Shia LaBeouf passed the torch.
Yeah.
All I know is when I saw this in the cinema, I just admitted that out loud, didn't I? Shit. The bit when they're in Chernobyl at the end, some bloke genuinely shouted out in the movie theatre, which is, get over it! I couldn't give a shit about the radiation. Jeremy Clarkson went there and he's fine. And he was referring to an episode of Top Gear.
I will say this, Burhan. You don't like Jay Courtney as an actor. He is going to be playing a character in the Suicide Squad movie, unfortunately.
I heard.
Oh, really?
He's really, really wooden, and the problem is, when you've got Bruce Willis being shitty, and then you've got another dude being wooden, there's nothing to bounce off of there. And I know you're talking about like the hamming up McClane that he was doing. Those are small little moments. They're minuscule. This movie makes The Amazing Spider-Man 2 look like an Oscar winner. It really is that bad.
Movie.
And
I like The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
It makes you wish that Michael Bay directed it just so that it would have some good action sequences in it. It's really that bad. And when you've got a director who's not visually there and doesn't understand story, you're fucked.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, which is, some of the action scenes in this movie are brilliant, but at the same time, you're sat there thinking, I can't quite put my finger on it, but it feels really hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the bit when they shoot the glass out in this movie and it falls down, you're just like, I don't feel any real sense of threat to, our heroes right now. In fact, almost you could argue that even though there are, I'm not saying it's a great movie, I'm just saying there is McClane in this movie. It's almost a hark back to the old school, 80s action movies, which is whenever they get into a perilous situation that they could not possibly survive, you're not invested, you don't care, you're just like, yeah, I don't know, you're going to shoot a hole in the wall or something, you're like, do you know what I mean? Which is what Die Hard is, which is you always cared and invested in McClane because you always thought, I really don't know how you're going to get out of this, but I'm by your side.
Do you know
that
what?
Makes sense.
I could make a shot-by-shot remake using my effects software and my two sons, and I bet you there'd be better chemistry. Just saying. It'll probably be a far better movie than this one. And when I watched
everyone, by the way, just because I'm talking behind the scenes, but just because she's listening and she likes us, everyone send a virtual hug to Patty.
Well, Patty can get a real hug from me. I'm coming to the States in March. Anyway.
Nice.
The whole issue that I have with this movie is the fact that the movie itself just doesn't have that same essence, that same je ne sais quoi. It was made because it just had a Die Hard sticker slapped on it, and Bruce Willis was in it.
I know we weren't going to talk about this, Miguel, but can you quickly fact me how much it cost and how much it grossed?
Die Hard 5?
Yeah.
I know for a fact that the movie bombed pretty hard, but let me see.
Because I know
he was actually quite popular in this country.
Oh yeah. It bombed here in America, from what I've heard. But yeah, $92 million budget made $300 million. So
Wow.
It took it back on worldwide receipts.
yeah, it made a ton of money. In fact, let me see what it was mostly foreign markets, because I'm looking at the domestic and the foreign gross. In America, it only made $67 million. In foreign
It didn't make its budget back in the States.
Nope, and in the foreign territories, it made $237 million. So it basically made it overseas.
Sorry, America, we destroyed McClane for you. You're going to get another one that's going to be really poor, not McClane-ish, because, well, the Europeans and the Brits loved it.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, you guys also did save Pacific Rim, so you guys are still good in my book in that regard.
I've still not seen it.
You should. They were actually selling it at my store for like $7, but I was like, I'll buy Riddick instead with the
I was
$7.
so
Well, you
upset that
obviously
that
used to
movie
work
was
at
not a porno.
Walmart. We have the
Just
same
saying.
thing where I work, which is if you wait long enough, don't buy a DVD on opening. If you wait long enough, it goes to the section that I like to call the £7 wall.
We have that. It's the $7 wall for Blu-rays.
It's just opposite the main wall, and if you wait long enough, everything seems to get sucked across.
Yeah. So I guess where do we go? Where does the series have to go from here?
If they're going to bring back the original director and they're gonna put Sam Jackson in it, even though I think, quite frankly, right now McClane, is he of pensioning age? I don't know.
I think he's almost in his late 60s, I believe. Let me pull up Bruce Willis.
I want to say mid 60s, early 60s.
No, actually 59.
Oh, there we go.
So he's only just now turning 60.
Well, see, we could technically, because, once he started shaving his head, he's looked the same for ages.
Yeah.
Although there's a TV commercial in this country about, internet broadband that he's on, and people, I don't want to sound horrible when I say this, but people say Davey being a dick, but I think I can see liver spots on him. But
The thing about
I could do one more. You know what? If they do one more by the original director, well written, and go back to the original premise, but not the original, stuck in a skyscraper, they can. But I mean confined premise where That's
You know
where
what?
5 and 4 went wrong, which is they just went all over the
You know what?
shop. And
Do
I'm
a
like,
double
3
team up. Make
didn't-
it Die Hard 6, Lethal Weapon 5, and just have like the two teams just go at it.
I don't know. I can, if it's well written, I can see one more, but it needs to get back to its roots, which is an old school threat.
No,
And they
the
could even
problem
make
is,
that.
in this day and age.
They could even make it like a throwback to the old day, which is some modern terrorist is just like, oh, the computer age. I don't like it.
But in this day and
I
age, do
preferred
you
it with
think-
threats or old school.
Do you think that they would do that basically based on the fact
No,
that
it'll be a
one,
CGI fest.
Bruce Willis is not fucking bothered anymore because he's made it exactly clear when he had that mental breakdown, and he's proven he's an asshole. Even Kevin Smith said that he won't work with him again after Cop Out, because apparently the reason why the movie sucked so bad was because of Willis,
Yeah.
and his vast demands, literally.
He's a diva, isn't he?
He is a very big. I think he's just doing it now because he's just fed up. He's gone to his grumpy old man phase. To the fact that in order to entice him back, they're probably going to need to pay him a lot more than the movie's going to gross. 3,
Yeah.
they're going to need to bring the old director back. If they do that, he's going to want more money. 4, Samuel Jackson wants to be involved. Is going to be involved again, so he's going to want more money because he's a bigger name now.
So immediately it's not going to break even.
It won't, and the problem is there's going to be so many
Based on the
backend
last
deals,
receipt in the US.
and you've got to trust Willis to actually want to actually act as John McClane. You know, it's
Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of with you. At this point, I just want the series to end. I don't. It's not going to get better. Even if you bring back the real director, it's all going to boil down to if Bruce Willis wants to do it. And I think at this point, he's done. Like,
It's almost, you could say that the Simpsons parody of Star Trek they did once kind of sums it up right now, which
So
is Star
very
Trek.
tired.
Oh, I wish I was dead.
yeah. Oh no, that was Death Wish. That was the critic in Death Wish.
Mm.
And I agree. It's something that's not feasible. The only way that they're going to have to do it is if Bruce Willis wants to do it, and he's got to come back properly. You know, he's got to be in the mind set to do it, and I just don't think it's going to happen. And it's sad because Die Hard to me would always be the first 3 movies. Everything else after that is just kind of fodder. And in my opinion, it was a great film franchise. No, do not reboot it. No, do not bring anyone else in it.
Oh,
Please
they
just leave
reboot
alone.
it. It's bad as it is right now.
Yeah, leave
And
it
I
alone.
can't remember to say this. I'll take a shit one over you fucking reboot this with someone else, especially not the fucking wooden twat who was his son. If you reboot this, then not quite as much in the same sphere as Back to the Future, but I will find you. I'll have a fucking Kickstarter campaign. Buy my airfare, and I will find you, and I will hurt you, and I'll say yippee-ki-yay motherfucker at the end, and the irony will be wasted on you because you don't know how to make a good Die Hard movie.
Not even I could save this movie franchise, and that's the truth. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be the right stage. But it.
I think what we can draw to round off this show then is the first 3, obviously the first more so than other, but the first 3 are absolute paramount and pinnacle action movies in mainstream cinema that the rest of us or the rest of the action community has benefited from because they've bled down with their stories, their concepts, their idea, and they've made the modern action world, the action movie world, a richer place because they went places other didn't.
Yeah.
The other 2, they can fuck off and die.
Because they became everything that Die Hard wasn't.
It became a parody of what they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They basically, you could have just thrown Stallone or Schwarzenegger in it, and it would have just been.
You
the same
could
thing.
argue that Die Hard 4 and 5, even though, like I said, I stand by what I said, which is there are moments in 5, and this is me not defending it, but it's just, I wanted to see McClane again, if that makes sense, because I love the character. There are moments in 5 that are McClane, there are a couple in 4 that are McClane, but you could argue that Die Hard 4 and 5 are the Naked Gun of the mainstream Die Hard movies.
I'll say this: if I could sum up the later Die Hard movies, it was if this generation saw the first 3 movies and didn't get it. Like
Yeah.
it was almost like it was the interpretation of the previous movies by a generation that just didn't understand why those movies worked.
Well, then I feel bad because playing what you just said, Miguel, is if you see people, not having a pop at them, but they should know their fucking cinematic history, walk into these movies the first time, they'll probably walk out, the last two, not the first three, walk out and just go, I don't get why my dad thinks Die Hard's the greatest franchise ever. That was just a fucking B-lister action movie. And it's like, no. What's the movie? To quote, you weren't there, no, it's spaced. You weren't there at the start. You don't know how special it was.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, I think that's a great way to round out the show. So before my throat completely dies out from all this speech we've done, Burhan, where can we find you?
You can find me, of course, nerdgenius.com, youtube.com/thenerdgenius. You could find this lovely radio network on youtube.com/unlimradio, twitter.com/unlimradio, and also via our lovely Facebook page, facebook.com/unlimradio. I'm going to be doing some more reviews and bits and pieces coming up. I am a bit behind in terms of schedule. I've got 2K15 to do, which I'll be doing with the Gaming Pegasus 187 and Brandon.
I'm really looking forward to that, by the way.
It's basically going to be the three of us and our free takes of the game. Again, I've got a Tales of Hearts R review coming this week as well. And watch this space as well. The Silent Hill Kickstarter is going to be happening. Been having a few back and forths about that. Scripts needs finishing touches done to it. But it's looking promising, and from the feedback that we're getting from the fans of the series as well, it's looking promising. So stay tuned for that. I've got loads of auditions, acting stuff coming up, directing stuff coming up. So stay tuned. If you want to find me, you can find me at imdb.com. Just type in Michael Burhan. Google my name, you'll find everything to do with me, including websites and bits and pieces as well. So there you go. And I do need subs, so go over to youtube.com/thenerdgenius and sub me, because you'll get some extra.
And show him some love, people, because he's the hardest working man on Tinterwebs.
I am, and It's fucking painful.
He's the James Brown of the internet. All right, Dave, where?
He pays his taxes.
No, that's Wesley Snipes you're talking about. But yeah, Dave, where can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Dave Wade. No surprises there, which is just random pictures and shit. But you can find me on YouTube at Lord Boys Post 1975, retro video games, and once a week I do random vloggy waffles. And I recorded the first one, not the first one, I recorded my one tonight when, I have to say, Miguel, I do thank you for suffering through Die Hard 4.
Trying to, at least.
Because you gave me 20 minutes to do my vloggy waffle for tonight, because Wednesday night's vloggy waffle, even though now it's Thursday, which I don't know if people know this, but today's the 20th, and oh god, I'm old, 20th anniversary of the PlayStation 1.
Yep, and I mentioned to Burhan, I'm like, this would be a perfect time to do a PS1 retrospective for IGG, so look out for that. That might be something in the cards.
Well,
you should do it on Saturday, Burhan. I would join you, but Saturdays, people out there don't pay too much attention to this. Saturday is my VOM day, so.
And it's also a bowel movement day for Dave. But there you go, guys. Make sure that you check out us and also these lovely shows on www.retrounlim.com.
Oh, and you can also follow the show on Twitter. We do have a Twitter account, twitter.com/unmovieshow. I will be updating that and posting the link for this week's episode up on there, and last week's, because I did post last week. So yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Miguel, if you do have a bad throat, this is completely unmovie related, but it's a tip I use, and it does work, but you got to do it properly, right? Take a glass, squeeze a little bit of lemon juice into it, squeeze a little bit of honey into it, take an aspirin, or in your case, Tylenol, grind it really, really, really fine, put it in the glass, stir it up so it's like a proper drink and shit, gargle with it, and then swallow it. Trust me, it will take the edge.
I was expecting him to go, turn that subject sailways and stick it straight up your candy ass.
And also, if that doesn't help, I can tell you how to freebase.
Now I got some halls right here, so I'll probably be chewing on that before I head to bed. But yeah, for myself, for Dave Wade, and for Michael Burhan, this has been the Unmovie Show. And tonight, because it's Die Hard, we're going to be playing something very special. So happy holidays, guys.
Celebrity voices are impersonated. No celebrities were harmed in the filming of this episode.
Excuse me, sir. The show's over.
Get away, zit face.
Stop making Die Hard movies.